to proceed quite quickly through this session. I think my conclusion is yes, we can. So I know you need to tell your Mr. Templeton, I think, you need to tell him that yes, it's likely, well, hopefully anyway, that we will be able to start the policy and socio-economic session on Thursday rather than leaving it Friday. I would say if anyone knows of anyone, I'm looking at the audience, just somewhat diminished, but if anyone knows of anyone who'd intended just to come on Friday, if you could let them know if they really want to see that session, it's best if they do try and make it for Thursday afternoon. But as Mr. Trinick reminded me, it is all being recorded, and I know from Ewan that it has worked. Yesterday's proceedings worked very well. So if anyone wants to watch them, I think the best, you will correct me if I'm wrong, the best thing to do is simply Google DPEA webcast, well, something like that, and that should get you to the without knowing the web address, that'll get you to the correct page. Thank you. I should have known that. In fact, I'm looking at that very page now. There's a link. If you go to our website, you should be able to find a link to it from there. So that was one thing. The other thing was the documents. There were, I think, we were suggesting we were going to get or maybe more documents from the applicant, and also there's a question as to whether you wanted to put a document in. Mr. Trinick, where are we with that?
No, it is now. Is that working now? Okay. Yes, thank you. First of all, on the programme, I think Thursday morning. I mean, Mr. Campbell will need to have an input here, but my guess is that we may well be ready to do policy on Thursday morning, not afternoon. And if we do that, my vote would be to continue on to conditions and not wait.
Yeah, I was being very pessimistic, as I usually am. But it's, yeah, I see no need for anything to be shifted on Friday if it doesn't have to be. So if it's convenient for everyone, I mean, I'd be happy to continue working a bit later on Thursday if we could avoid Friday at all. If that, I don't know what.
So I think it's quite ambitious, given the way that the landscape seems to grow legs. However, Mr. Trinick's kindly told me how long he's going to be with Mr. Bonzio. I have, of course, got a few questions supplementary in chief, and he has to read his recognition. So, and then there are questions around socioeconomics. But yes, it's doable. But it's I think with an early start, a short lunch hour, and perhaps a late sitting on Thursday, we might do it. But you must know by now. You never ask the lawyers how long they're going to take, because they always take longer.
That's helpful. We'll see how we go. But, I mean, I will be available on Friday if we need to be. It's not a problem for me at all. But we'll see how we go.
On documents, the government's programme, or at least the whole programme, has been circulated electronically. It's a pretty massive document, and I think we only need concern ourselves, at least we are only concerning ourselves, with the executive summary in Chapter 1. We've simply not been able to generate, that's just Chapter 1 of the executive summary, enough copies for everybody, so I apologise for that. But we do want to put that in, and Mr. Bell will want to speak to that in the policy session. This is one further document, and that is also for the policy session. Copies have been handed to other parties. I don't know if there are any objections to it coming in. Giving evidence, come on. Giving evidence. Yeah. That's fine. Thank you.
What the other document is, well, I'll find out when Ms. Martin gives it to me. Sure. And the executive summary, do you have a spare printed copy of that, or will you have one before tomorrow? Thanks. Thank you. It's just Samara in my office is not around. Thank you. So I may not get electronic things before tomorrow. Well, I'll try and chase them up. Somebody should be looking at our emails, but it might be I don't actually see it. Okay, thank you.
I have no more this morning.
You, Scott?
I think in relation to that document, the government policy document, it was emailed out last night and I forwarded it on to Mr Templeton. I think the only point he's made is it is 158 pages long. He's doing other things. He doesn't know how much time he will have to digest that before either tomorrow or Friday. So no objection to it being in, but it's doubtful he'll have any meaningful discussion on it because he may not have time to digest it. On the other point, I think having considered the position in light of the applicants lodging APP 8 yesterday, which was the SNH paper on landscape capacity study, which then led to some questions from Mr Chinnock. In response, Carol Anderson obviously raised this new document for which we apologise because we hadn't considered lodging it, but I think as a result of the way the questions were going, it might be appropriate if it is before the inquiry. I have managed to download it. I can email it to parties today, and that would be the first document we'd lodge. That would just be Murray Council 1. I think just for it's called an approach to landscape sensitivity assessment to inform spatial planning and land management, and it's by Natural England, and it was published in June. So I can email that to parties today. That, I'm not sure if that'll help you then if it goes to Samira.
To try and chase my office. I mean, now I've told them what it is and who published it. I can probably find it. Yeah, I can probably find it on their website. I mean, if I guess if parties feel that there's something desperately, urgently important in either the programme for government or anything else that we haven't had a chance to look through fully by tomorrow, probably, then we can always deal with that by written submissions if we had to. It sounds as though it might not be anything too fundamental, but you know we can always deal with that if we need to. If anyone really feels they haven't had a chance to digest it fully. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Trinnick, when you're ready.
Thanks, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Trinnick.
We finished with the landscape capacity study, and I want to turn on briefly to look at the supplementary guidance. Now, I know that's policy, and I'm only looking at it insofar as it relates to the landscape capacity study, but if at any stage you say, look, that's not for me, I'll understand. Let's see how far it goes.
Okay.
Could we have some quiet down there, please? Looking at the supplementary guidance, therefore, CD 44, if you turn to page 20. Okay, so on page 20, paragraph 2, the heading is extensions and repowering of wind farms. And second paragraph, proposed extensions, and then some advice is given, to which I will return. But there's one word in there which triggers a question. Should incorporate the same design principles as the adjacent wind farms. And when I saw that, I thought, well, how do you define an extension? Does it need to be, and Mr. Campbell will tell me I got the rule, contiguous, congruent with the existing wind farm? Or can it be nearby? How far away can it be? How do you visualise an extension?
I wasn't author of this. I'm not quite sure what was intended to be meant by adjacent wind farms. It could be where you've got a number of extensions already to an existing wind farm and they're counted as individual developments. So I can't really comment on that. Okay,
but if you try, let's see if I accept that answer because you're not the author of this document. I understand that. If you go to map 4 for the SG, and look at the hatched area, which is said to be for extensions and repowering, perhaps you can see why I'm asking the question, because the hatched area obviously goes well beyond the existing wind farms and probably beyond any reasonable definition of an adjacent extension. And yet that is the area said in this, covering most of Paul's Hill too, some of it, I'm not going to argue about how much. That's the area set for extensions. And indeed, if we look down at the area 2 to the southeast, going towards Huntley, I'm not sure that area's got any wind farms at all.
It has Clash and Darragh on the border.
Oh, of course, it's just in
Aberdeenshire.
Aberdeenshire. Of course it has. That's right, down there. Yep.
Area 3, that's Altmoor, which was a consented development, which was taken as forming part of the baseline in the study. Sorry, there are lots of twos, aren't there?
Yes, appear to be.
The middle two, that's sort of Rothes. Yes, it does extend some way. I think it's also, I think these have been taken from the landscape capacity study.
They have.
And the mapping there. And there's that mapping in there was not just for repowering and extensions. It was indicating where larger turbines could be accommodated.
That's what I thought. So again, I don't think you and I can take this.
Potentially be accommodated, I should caveat that.
Yep, no, I understand that caveat. So I don't think you and I in this session can take this much further. Perhaps I'm putting down markers as much for the policy session.
Yes.
Yeah, that we do need to understand what these hatched areas actually mean. If they're set out explicitly for extensions and repowering, I couldn't claim that some of these areas could claim to be an extension of anything. They simply go a lot further.
I accept that.
So we have to know what they mean.
I think particularly the middle two, as it were, to the east of Rothes, that is quite an extensive area.
Yeah.
Of course, you do have in the area of Paul's Hill, we do have Bury Burn, so that could be classified as a potential area for an extension.
That's fair. Well, we'll come back to the policy session, but just to finish off this particular point, there was no argument about Paul's Hill too. I mean, that is an extension.
Yes.
Yep, that's fine. If you stay on page 20, indeed in the same paragraph, we see the advice there given about extensions. Same design principles as the adjacent wind farm, same scale, size, colour, same rotational speed to prevent visual impacts on the landscape. I needn't read any more, but it's there for people to read, at least for the purpose of my question. In your inquiry report at 2.3, you take up this issue and go some way to recognising that the words of that advice may be a little impractical when you say, I consider in some circumstances the size of adjacent turbines doesn't need to be the same, but should appear similar from key viewpoints. I suppose my question is this, that it isn't just about the height of the turbine, is it? As Mr. Denny has said in evidence, it's about how that turbine is perceived in terms of local, within-site topography for a large site,
yes.
and in terms of external topography in terms of any available screening.
To a degree, the available screening in long views, but in terms of the topographical variations on the site, that can influence the integrity of a wind farm design particularly if you've got varying sizes of turbines.
Yeah, I think we're at one on that. I'm not going to insult your intelligence by saying what is similar and as opposed to what is the same, because your evidence is these turbines are too tall, so that tells us where you're coming from in relation to this inquiry. Mm-hmm. But can we agree, at least, that it's not a simple matter of height of turbine? You have to look at the perception of the viewer and take account of local topography and available screening, and a much higher turbine than those which exist on the neighbouring site may be acceptable in that context.
I don't know about a much higher turbine. It depends on how much you mean by much. But I think it is that height differential which matters. Mm-hmm. 10, 20 metres may not matter. But you've got to take it each case on a case-by-case basis and look at it in the round in views.
I think we have a point of agreement there. It is a case-by-case basis. And you see what fits on a case-by-case basis. But the advice in the SG, I know you didn't write it, you're not responsible for it, but simply insisting on same scale, size, colour and rotational speed, it's a bit of a hope and a prayer, isn't it? That's not going to happen.
It's quite stringent.
It's quite stringent, that's fair. Now, I know you're familiar with the evolution of turbine sizes because you deal with them in the LCS. Mm-hmm. And indeed in Chapter 4 you deal with very large turbines up to and indeed beyond the Falls Hill 2,
yes.
Up to 200 metres. So you know what's happening in the market. You know that bigger turbines are coming forward. I mean, have you seen any proposals of less than, shall we say, 130 metres come forward in Murray in the last 5 years? For wind farms, not for individual turbines.
Yes, Altmore.
What size was that?
I can't quite remember, but I don't think it was over 130 metres.
Okay, Altmore. In the area we're looking at, say on map 4, for the Rothas area and for the Paul's Hill area and Bury Burn, all the proposals coming forward are, for better or for worse, more than 130 metres, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah. And although I don't want to test you on your knowledge of the viability of wind turbines in the current market, I'm sure your deep experience of what's happening, shown in the LCS, you're aware of what's happening, is that the smaller turbines, such as Paul's Hill at 100 metres, are unlikely to come forward for viability reasons in the post-subsidy world.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah. So, and again I acknowledge that this isn't your document, but I'm going to put the point, at least to put down a marker, and if you want to answer it, that's absolutely fine. But really, is there any point at all in giving the sort of advice which simply cannot be fulfilled and won't be fulfilled? Same size turbines, same colour, same rotational speed. It's pointless.
I think the advice given in the document is generally sound. I think it is quite stringent, that particular paragraph, but the rest of the information in the SG is setting out information on quite a sound basis.
Okay, well, as I said, I put down the marker, I've tested the view, I can't take that further, and thank you for the answer. Thank you for engaging with it, it's very helpful. But there are two, perhaps, further factors to take into account, aren't there, in the context of appropriate size and rotational speed. The first is, of course, that Paul's Hill 1 may become the subject of a repowering application. And if that happens, and indeed you foreshadowed that in the LCS, perhaps you're more buoyant about the repowering market than we are. But if that does come forward, you're going to see bigger turbines on Paul's Hill 1. than 100 metres, and with a rotational speed more commensurate with Paul's Hill 2 if that gets consent and is built.
Well, that's a possibility, though it is interesting that Mr Denny didn't consider that in his inquiry report. The future baseline wasn't considered to be a repowering of Paul's Hill 1. So,
well, let me just say, to defend Mr Denny, if you don't mind this statement from me, that there was some legal advice involved there that until and if there is a repowering proposal which has consent, the only appropriate baseline is a zero baseline.
okay.
So you can't assume that there's going to be a repowering consent.
But
Maybe
can
your
you
council is more buoyant about that than we are.
Can you equally make a decision that that it would be decommissioned as well?
Well, the default position is decommissioning, clearly.
Okay.
But all I said, I think you're taking this further than it needs to go,
Okay.
if you don't mind me saying so. Never mind what Mr Denny said, and I've explained why he said what he said. If Paul's Hill 1 is repowered, it is likely to be with interference from across the room there. It's likely to be with larger turbines with rotational speed more commensurate with that of Paul's Hill 2 if built.
Well, that's a possibility, but we don't even know what the particular turbine model is going to be of Paul's Hill 2, so I can't really address that.
Well, I think you can more than you are, in the sense that you've written the LCS, you know the way that turbine sizes are going. If a proposal comes forward for Paul's Hill 1 at any time in the future, it's not going to be with 100-metre turbines, it's going to be with larger turbines.
Yes, I agree with that,
Yeah.
but my point, the point that I was making was about rotational speeds, which you had mentioned. We
Yeah.
can't gauge that in full until we know what the models are going to be.
That's perfectly fair. My second and last point on this is that on large wind farm sites, and I count Paul's Hill 1 as a large wind farm site, I may be wrong, I may be right, it's subjective, but you don't always get the same rotational speeds across a site, do you?
No, you don't.
So that looking at Paul's Hill 1 at any one time, you may get turbines that are idling, looking for wind, some which are turning to wind speed of 4 or 5 metres a second, and some at the other end turning at 8 or 9 metres a second. It happens.
Yes, it does.
So the concept of perceived rotational speed is more complex simply than the turbines which are being deployed.
Yes.
Right. Now let's look and see what the SG says about repowering. If we go back to page 20 of the document. It's on page 20, I did say that. I think we've all read it, but I'm referring to the last paragraph on page 20. And I'm looking at the advice given on page 21, which is unexceptional for the most part, and noting that third paragraph on page 21 refers to the area we're in and the landscape capacity study. We then have the advice on very large turbines below, again referring to the landscape capacity study, again referring to open rolling uplands. What I wanted just to test out with you, and again we're in the sphere of if you don't know, say so, but we do need to explore it at some stage. If you look at map 1 within the series of 4, but also get out from the appendices to the SG map 16. So you'll need them side by side. So you have got a hard copy of map 1, haven't you? Yep. I'll go to map 16 first. when you get there. Map 16, I think, replicates, so far as area 10 is concerned, the position you set out in the LCS, or not?
Yes, I think that is the upland, moorland and forestry landscape character type.
Yeah. Let's just do a quick comparison to make sure. Yes, it is. That seems to follow the boundaries more or less. But then we come to map 1, and that's the puzzle I just want to explore. Because it would seem, for reasons I'll give, that the council is saying there is no capacity in Bury for very large turbines at all on a greenfield basis, i.e. not extensions or repowering, but other than extensions or repowering. The reason I say that is if you look at the caption, the pink, area of greatest potential large. Now large has a meaning in terms of typologies. It means 80 metres and over. But then if you look at the right-hand side of that page, it says large typologies to 130. And I'm not clear from looking at map 1 that the council is actually saying there's any capacity for above 130, except for extensions and repowerings on the basis of map 4. Do you want to comment?
The only comment I'll make is that further down in that key it also says very large typologies to 150 metres.
It does. I'm referring to the left, though, to the pink.
Oh, to the pink?
Well, yeah, to the pink, because that says areas of greatest potential large. Hence my question. Not very large, but large. And there are two different typologies. Do you want to comment?
I don't want to comment because I wasn't the author of that.
No.
I would say that the pink is based on the landscape character type, but obviously with other constraints taken out.
Yes.
So it's on a landscape character type basis with some of the hatched areas in the landscape capacity study overlaid on that.
So yeah, that's an SPP. Sorry, that's the LCS area, but with SPP Group 2 areas taken out.
I think so.
Yeah, that looks like it to me too.
Yes.
All right, well, that's for the policy session, but, sir, I think we do need to explore that point in the policy session. What we do know, though, if we go to map 4, is that for these hatched areas for extensions and repowering, and if you look at the right-hand side, area 2, that would appear to follow the LCS and allowing for turbines up to 150 metres.
Yes.
Okay, that's as far as we can take that clarification exercise. Let's go to Roy's Hill. Which is the topic of reason for objection 1, perhaps 2. No, it's a reason for objection 1 by Murray Council, which you rehearse fairly on in paragraph 3.1 of your inquiry report. Now, you explore Roy's Hill at 5.9 to 5.11, so let's go there. I wanted us to explore, first of all, the source of this concept of landmark hills, because we know it's not a matter of policy within the LDP. I think that's common ground. Of 2015. Looking at the LCS, if you would, at page 94. actually we get out a third document, so we can do it all at once the questions start. Also, the SG at appendix at page 74. The glossary of terms in that document. As I see it, the origin of landmark hills as a strategic landscape issue is wholly within the LCS.
It is.
Was that present in the LCS of 2012, or was it?
Yes, it was.
So it's 2012. Then we have the LDP of 2015, but there's no policy on landmark hills. Then, in order of events, we have the LCS and the SG 2017. So far as the the supplementary guidance is concerned, and I'll be rude, it's a strange document since it doesn't have policies or set guidance. It's more of any guidance you find is within the text. That's where you find it. And we have a glossary on page 74, which tells us what these things are, indeed following what the LCS says. And we have at the end some maps, and on the map, and I think it's map 11, is it? I'll find it, don't worry. It is map 11. Remarkably, and it's not in the appendices, it's earlier on in the document, following page 54. Let me know when you got there, sir. We have the landmark hills marked, and then we have an inset that tells us what they are and gives some development management advice, doesn't it?
Yes.
But that's all we have as far as I'm aware, unless you tell me otherwise within the supplementary guidance.
I think so.
So the sole sources of advice the reporter can find on landmark hills, noting their origin in the LCS, is the LCS itself and supplementary guidance.
Yes, that's correct.
That's fine. Now, we've discussed in this inquiry already the distinctiveness of Roy's Hill in the evidence of Mr. Denny. To explore the issue with you, can you keep alongside you page 74 of the SG? Sorry, I should have said don't put it away. What I was going to do, but what I'm not going to do, because the reporter can do it for himself, and it's a very boring exercise, is to go through every single viewpoint and say, is it prominent from there? But so that's the purpose of the exercise, is to explore whether Roy's Hill really fits the definition.
Okay, can I just interrupt there, because I think using the representative viewpoints from the ES is not good enough. I think you have to look at it in the round. They're widely spaced, the viewpoints. I think particularly driving southwestwards on the A95 gives a very good impression. No doubt you've done that already. So.
Sorry, my apologies.
So I just said that's the direction of my hotel. So I see that every evening. So yeah, I had a feeling you were going to say don't just look at the viewpoints. You could have.
And I have to say it's looking particularly fine at the moment as the heather's in bloom.
I'm delighted.
Sorry?
I'm delighted. But, and I take your point about viewpoints not telling the whole story. Of course they don't. They're representative, and sometimes only marginally that in terms of the overall experience. So I'm not going to bicker with you about that at all. But what I want to perhaps suggest, and leave it for the reporter to make up his mind, because we could go on forever about this topic, is that whereas if you look at Ben Rennes, or the, going to ones I know well from other events, the Knocker of Bray Murray, or Benagan, or the Buck in particular, perhaps, even Bram Muir, up towards Elgin. And perhaps the Ben of Cullen. Those are the ones I know, and I can say, yeah, those are steep-sided. Those are easily recognisable landmarks. They are highly visible. They're locators for you in the landscape. You say, I know where I am, there's the Buck. I know where I am, there's the Knockabro Murray. There's Davamore down there, so I've located. They're very useful indicators. Not Roy's Hill. That doesn't help you at all in those senses, and that's what I put to you.
A landmark can give you some means of navigation, but it doesn't always have to do that. And I accept that there are more prominent hills because of their height, because of their form, because of their location perhaps, like the Knock that is on the edge of Aberdeenshire and Moray, which is set in low-lying or lower-lying farmland, so it stands out more. But actually, Roy's Hill does, in my opinion, form a landmark because it's set at a pivotal point between the Spey and the Alt Arder and the Knockando burns. So there's a sort of gap of these tributary burns coming up from the, or draining into the Spey, and it's set at that corner, as it were, which I think it does have a prominent influence on that part of the Spey Valley.
Okay, we're going to have to agree to disagree. I'm not going to go on pushing you because I know your view and you know our view, and the reporter knows very clearly where we differ. But I do want to explore. Let me just add one aside there. No one is saying that Roy's Hill isn't a local marker for Mr. Bonzio coming home. You'll see Roy's Hill and think, I'm near home. I understand all that. But the concept of landmark hills goes beyond that, doesn't it? It's a Murray-wide strategic landscape issue as defined in the LCS. These are Murray-wide markers. These are Murray-wide features, and they're defined as such, easily recognisable landmarks in a whole Murray context.
I think your use of Murray-wide is not, I don't agree with that. I mean, they are a feature of Moray, and it was something when we were doing the landscape capacity study that we were very aware that there were these hills that kept popping up as we were doing our field work, and that was part of the reason for identifying them.
Sorry, I interrupted. Didn't mean to.
So they are located across Moray, but they don't necessarily all have the same degree of prominence in views within Moray and adjacent areas.
Okay, let's follow that through another way. The origin of this concept is a landscape capacity study looking at wind farms.
Yes.
And I wonder if there hasn't been some unintentional blurring between the concept of a landmark hill and the issue of locational containment of wind farms. Because as we see it, and I'll put the point to you once I've just finished this, as we see it, landmark hills are not really, I mean, some of them are landmarks, clearly, but as far as Roy's Hill is concerned, we say it's not. It serves a purpose of locational containment, not visual containment, locational containment, but it's not a landmark.
What do you mean by locational containment?
I mean, for example, and go there if you want, but we're very familiar with it, that if you go to somewhere like viewpoint 7, the locational containment function is served because you're able to place turbines behind the skyline such that they are, as we say, you disagree, over there rather than down here. Locational containment. But you can still see the turbines. It's not visual containment. That's what we mean.
I don't understand how Roy's Hill plays a part in that, if you're meaning that the existing turbines appear to be sited more in an upland area. Is that what you're meaning?
Well, I think that's what I said. If they're hull down behind the skyline, they're up there if you like, in the upland, certainly beyond the area that the viewer is standing in at viewpoint 7. They serve, Lorries Hill there serves a purpose of locational containment. It presents in it, therefore, the turbines from viewpoint 7 and others, I'm just using it as an example, present an image of being up there in another landscape because of the locational containment of Roy's Hill, but it's not visual containment, and it's not a landmark hill issue.
I don't understand your concept of locational containment. I think there is partial visual containment from some views of the existing wind farm, and Roy's Hill performs that function. I think we're just going to have to differ about its degree of prominence and its definition as a landmark hill. I think it's quite clear in the landscape capacity study that the role of some of the landmark hills is expressed as providing some containment to existing wind farm development.
Yeah, I mean, I don't invent this point myself. If you look at Mr. Denny's inquiry report at paragraph 6.6 on page 34, that may be a useful point of reference. Page 34, 6.6. You might just want to read it through and then we'll come back to it. I'm sure Mr. Denny puts the point far better than I did in my question to you. But do you understand now what we're saying?
No, I don't. I do not.
Okay.
I do not understand what locational containment means.
I think I've explained as best I can. If I failed, I apologise. But just to put it one last time, just to give us a chance of debating it on a basis of understanding what each other means, what we're saying is that, Mr. Denny says, in most cases, so far as Roy's Hill is concerned, and Paul's Hill Wind Farm, 1 and 2, that Roy's Hill is not a landmark. It's not an easily recognisable landmark, but it does serve a purpose of containing wind farms in the upland when perceived from the lowland, especially the Spey Valley, because you can place the turbines such that their bases are not visible. They are set back beyond the skyline. But it's not visual containment. You can still see them. Of course you can see them. There's no visual containment.
I think there is some visual containment in certain views. If you imagine that hill wasn't there, you would see the existing wind farm very fully from the A95 instead of just having glimpses of it.
Yeah. All right, I think we see where we're apart. 5.9 of your inquiry report. I'm not sure this is a cheap shot or not. Let's give it a go, and you'll tell me if it's a cheap shot. If you go to the Appendix F to the landscape capacity study, and you go to the very last page, there is a sketch, or 3 sketches. It's clear that these are diagrammatic, but did you draw these sketches?
Yes, I did.
Are they intended to give some appreciation to the reader of what a landmark hill looks like?
Yes.
You see, when I saw that sketch, I thought, yeah, I see a point in relation to the Buck or the Knockable Murray or Ben Egan or even Ben Rennis. But, you know, that's nothing like Paul's Hill.
I think that is a cheap shot because, I mean, very diagrammatic, and it's showing a principle of siting and design. So I think that's quite unfair.
I'll probably take that on the chin. Let's go to reason for objection 2. And that's about being sited as the project to the edge of the open rolling uplands, visually encroaching on the Slave Valley. Go to paragraph 5.4 of your inquiry report. Proposed terms to be sited closer to the... Do you mean the western edge?
Sorry, 5.4?
Yeah, the eastern.
Oh, that is a mistake.
That's right.
It should say the eastern edge of the rolling uplands, open rolling uplands, actually, not the upland moorland and forestry.
That's okay.
I think that's what it's meant to say.
That's fine. Problems. That's correct. Closer to the eastern edge, then, of the open rolling uplands, if you go to within the LCS to the maps, so these maps, and you look at the map for Area 11, I suspect I know where this may go, but because I'm looking at a plan and you're probably interpreting things from the ground. But looking at Paul's Hill 2, we know where it is. It's not shown on the map, but we can visualize where it is. It's pretty central within Area 11, I would have said. It's not. It is closer to the eastern edge of the open rolling uplands, but it's pretty well bang in the middle of the area, wouldn't you say?
The existing wind farm?
No, proposed Paul's Hill 2.
Well, no, I'm going to answer that it depends on how you see it from the ground and in the surrounding area. I think it appears to be closer to the edge, and that's because of the valley, I think, opening up at that point.
Yeah, I thought that'd be your answer. So what we come back to is the ubiquitous view from something like viewpoint 7.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, I understand your evidence on that. In terms of perhaps more of a cross-examination point, in 5.4, and dealing with viewpoint 7, and you might go to that now. And when you get to it, I should go to the first photo montage, if you wouldn't mind.
Is that figure 6.14G?
Well, yes, it probably is. I'm going by the AI, but
oh, right.
6G6 would probably be in your ES.
Or
Might be 7G6. Okay. In 5.4, this is the edge of area 11 point. While some screening would be provided, turbines 1, 4 and 5 particularly dominant, etc. Then you say the proposal would overwhelm the scale of the small farms and pastures seen in the foreground of viewpoint 7, would diminish the strongly rural character of this smaller scale settled landscape. Let me put to you, so as to engage directly with this point, what we say in response, which is, and I'll put the whole thing in full, and then you can comment, that first of all, the turbines are very clearly, perhaps my locational containment point again, beyond the Spey Valley, in the uplands beyond. They are set back into the uplands because you can't see the bases. They don't come forward down towards you. Secondly, that the scale of the foreground landscape, contrary to what you say, isn't actually small. It's a fairly large-scale landscape. And thirdly, it's sufficiently robust that it can easily absorb what's happening up there with Paul's Hill 2 without being overwhelmed or compromised. Your response?
Okay, well, obviously I don't agree with that. I think your first point was about the bases being partially screened. I think you're still seeing the greater part of the turbines proposal in that view. I don't agree about you saying it is a large-scale landscape. That is quite incorrect. And I think I do say that it's a smaller scale landscape. I do not say it's small scale. And this is because it has a degree of openness which increases scale, but it also has a land cover pattern, field pattern, woodland pattern, small woodlands, and small-scale development, dispersed development, which reduces the scale of that landscape that you see in the foreground. It is clearly not an upland landscape. You can see that when you can compare Roy's Hill in the backdrop. That is an upland landscape. The foreground is a smaller scale landscape, a settled landscape.
We're in fundamental disagreement there. We can't take it further. The reporter has a note. Thank you. In 5.5, let's try and shortcut this one. This is the point at which you say that receptor sensitivity has been underestimated. Let's assume you're right. Let's elevate that sensitivity. What you don't tell us, and like your view on this, is whether or not that the impact of Paul's Hill from that viewpoint would be significant. Using the methodology you've adopted from the LVIA.
It's true, I don't, and I should have done. I do think it would be significant, particularly from sections of the B9-102, as I've said.
No, the viewpoint 7.
Viewpoint 7?
Yeah.
Yes, I do think that it's significant and adverse, yes.
Right, and that's using the methodology you've adopted because of elevated sensitivity.
Yes, and also the magnitude of impact, magnitude of change, sorry.
But I'm not sure you're disagreeing with the magnitude of change estimated in the ES.
No.
Do you know what the magnitude of change estimated in the ES was?
I can't remember.
I'm not going to tease you on this. Let's just get it out and have a look. You mind if I record it to you rather than ask you to dig it out? Is that all right? It's ES. No, I don't mean AI. Here we have it. It's on page 657, so of the environmental statement. And we see, I'll wait till you get there.
So the sensitivity is assumed to be, or judged to be low.
Yeah, that's at the, hang on, let me just, Yes, because we have low value, low susceptibility, and then therefore low sensitivity at the top of page 658. Then magnitude of change, overall magnitude moderate.
Yes, and I think actually the way that has been done is, in my view, it doesn't sort of fully comply with GLVIA 3, in that it looks at geographical extent, etc., and then comes to a conclusion based on that, rather than so the size and scale of the magnitude of change is major, and then that's sort of reduced down to moderate once the other factors are taken into account, which it's not how I would do it.
Well, that's okay, but the point is, I addressed you at the very start of cross-examination about the methodology you used, because you don't express one, and therefore I can't engage with it. And I think you said, didn't quite say you agree with the methodology in the ES, you said I think you said it accorded with the GLVIA or something like that.
Yes.
And now you tell us something different. Well, all right, but in terms of magnitude of change, are you saying, in your view, but without a methodology to cross-examine, that you think it's more than moderate?
I think it's major.
All right. Well, I have a view. I just want to explore one or two itty-bitty points in connection with effects on the Spey Valley, in no particular order. I'm looking at views from the south, and I want you to go to viewpoint 1, if you would. So if we go in the AI to 7A6, which is the photo montage. You tell us in your inquiry report at 5.7 about the appearance of turbines spilling down the slope. You don't use viewpoint 1 for this, but we are in the valley. There's no issue of spilling down in that viewpoint, is there?
No.
So let's go to viewpoint 3, which is one where you do pick up this point, and that's a Ben Rennes. Use the wireline if you want, I don't mind. It's figure 7C1. Actually, no, let's go to the photo montage if you don't mind. I think you need to have that appearance of landscape rather than just landform to deal with this. That's better. Or you can go to 7C7 if you want, whichever makes the point best. We'd say again, no, it doesn't, the turbines don't spill down the outer slopes in the way that you describe in 5.7. So for the reporter's note, I want your response to that.
I think the two turbines that you see to the right in that view clearly do, in my opinion.
All right, we disagree on that. Reporter's got a note. And in viewpoint 7, I want to go there. And again, you might go to the last photo montage. Sorry, it's not viewpoint 7, my apologies. Viewpoint 9. 9. This is figure 7J7. That's the 95 viewpoint between Aberdare and Ballindarloch. There we give you something, because I think you're talking about the two turbines which do come downslope a bit.
Yes.
Those are the two you mean?
Yes.
All right. But other than those two turbines, so the reporter has a note of our position, we say, noting the viewpoints of representative, noting you have to travel through the landscape more widely, at least on the basis of what we're examining in this room, that viewpoint 9 is the only one where you might have a point, and then in respect to two turbines. We have your view, and I'm not expecting a response. You've got the note. Right. Going on to reason for objection 3. I've got no more on 2 because these are subjective issues, the difference is clear, etc., etc. You tell us in 5.12 to 5.14 that there's a poor visual relationship between what is proposed in the existing Paul's Hill wind farm, and you give your reasons for saying that. I want to just tackle something in 5.14. I mean, that's again largely subjective, but there is a point in 5.14 that's not. We say that no analysis has been undertaken of the compatibility of the proposal to the existing Paul's Hill turbine in the AI, despite 124 stating a comparison is provided. Is your point that no analysis has been undertaken full stop, or simply that there's not one in the AI?
It's not one in the AI.
But that's a story part told, isn't it? Because if you look at the ES, you told me you'd read chapter 3.
Yes, I have.
And you'll know, therefore, that at the following paragraphs, you can go there if you want, but you say you've read it, so you may just agree with me, that 3.5.16 to 23, 3.6.1, and on figures 3.2, 3A and 3.3B, 3.3A and 3.3B, there is a fairly careful exploration of the relationship between Paul's Hill 1 and the proposed turbines.
Can we go to that?
Of course you can.
I have read it, but I can't remember the
Yes,
paragraph
of course.
numbers. So could you give me those again, please?
Yep. If you go to page 311 of the ES, uh, 3.5.16 to 23. This is only part of the story. I suggest there is a careful discussion about design, indeed headed to the design process. 3.6.1. I think you're wrong. I mean, you may not agree with the result, but attention has been paid to design in the context of Paul's Hill 1.
Yes, I don't agree with the result, obviously. And it's interesting to note that it says in 3.5.16 that the design process has followed advice contained in SNH's current guidance siting and designing wind farms in the landscape. And within that document, there is a reference to aiming to achieve compatibility with existing developments, existing wind farms, when you're designing an extension. So
this is paragraph 416, the one we've been to before.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right, yes.
But that's the same sort of rather hopeless advice as the supplementary guidance, isn't it?
I don't think that's hopeless at all. I think that's very fair and accurate.
Design objectives should echo those of the original wind farm. Use turbines compatible with those in the existing wind farm, including aspects of scale, form, colour, rotational speed. Sorry, I put it to you again. that's the sort of hopeless abyss we see in the SG, isn't it?
No, it's not. It says compatible. It doesn't say the same. And I think that's very unfair.
Well, we say not. We say it's accurate, but the report hasn't noted that. But coming back to the iterative design process, would you, if you don't agree with the result, I don't want you to. Attention has been paid.
Well, they say it has been paid.
Mm.
It's not evident in the result.
Well, that's another matter. That's a matter of opinion. Coming on to cumulative effects. This is our last topic, and we're about 5 minutes out from the end or less. We go to 516, which is at page 516. This down to the end of the page. It's more of a clarification exercise, so I know what we have here. Right? You have, if you like, a scenario 1. First. Scenario 2, you add in consented. Scenario 3, you add in planning.
Yes.
So this section, as I understand it, simply for scenario 3.
Yes, that's correct.
And it looks at in combination effects only.
That's right.
And insofar as it looks at in combination, it wouldn't be unfair to say that certainly in 5 and more generally, it's Clashgower and Rothers 3 that you see making the greater contribution in the general
I think
context.
that's quite clear in my text. Yes.
It is. That's absolutely fine. And just for the reporter's note, we can note that Clashgower and Rothers 3 are both going to go to inquiry at some stage.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I may have a question of my own, if you bear with me for a second. Yeah, I was interested in the question of spilling down sort of into the lower, smaller scale, as you say it, landscape. I wondered if we look at viewpoint 7 in the ES, I guess that's, do I mean 7? Hang on. Yes. And the one in the right direction, yeah, 7. We were looking at that before. This isn't, I think, one of the locations where you're concerned with spilling down, because they're behind the...
No.
Yeah. I'm trying to explore what I think Mr. Trinnick was trying to explore earlier about just Mr. Denny's point about, although you can see, and I think you said, well, you can see most of the turbines, you can see a great extent of the tower as well as the tops of them, but it's not Mr. Denny's word, I don't think, but I think what he's saying is they're sort of rooted somewhere else, up in the uplands, because you can't see the base, he says. Do you think, what value or significance, if any, do you think that has to either effects on landscape character in the valley or on visual effects, as you would perceive them from being within the valley? As I understand his point, it's that although, yes, you see them quite clearly, perhaps more clearly than you see the existing turbines, but you see them as being somewhere else, because you don't see the bases, albeit you see a lot of them. Do you see there's any mileage in that sort of argument?
I think in this instance they are too close to that smaller scale landscape that you see in the foreground, and therefore they have a greater influence affecting the appreciation of the character of that area. And that's to do with their size, but also their proximity. I think if they were set back further and were perhaps smaller turbines, you would have less of an effect. And whereas they may be perceived as being located in the uplands, they do also, when you're in that landscape, feel that they're very much on the outer edge of those uplands, and that increases the impact.
Just for completeness, I think different point on the spilling down point. I think you identified 2 turbines in viewpoint 9, but also 2 in viewpoint 3. I think I just wondered whether in viewpoint I'm not trying to put words into your mouth, but viewpoint 6, if we can go there, which is at Archie's Town, is that you can tell that that's not spilling down. That's I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I'm just.
Viewpoint 6.
Yeah. 6.14F.
There is that effect, though I would say at that viewpoint, I found it difficult to actually see the turbine of the proposal from there because the trees are grown up. So that's why I didn't particularly note that viewpoint. But you might see a similar effect on the B9 102, I think it is, as you're coming out of Archiston intermittently. You might get that effect.
I suppose the other question which I raised with Mr. Denny, I think, and I think viewpoint 1 is probably as good as any, which, if you remember, I was asking him about, his point, I think, was, yes, the turbines are quite different in scale to Horse Hill 1, but because of the careful way in which it's been designed, it still reads as one wind farm, one development, and gives the impression that those that you see as being larger, they in fact appear as much closer. So you're seeing it as one wind farm, but sort of extending into the distance. I asked him the question about, which is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't think you were specifically raising it, or the council specifically raising its objection, about this whole issue of visual confusion, and you can't appreciate the correct depth of the landscape or the scale of the landscape by virtue of different scale machines appearing to be either closer together or further apart. Am I right in saying that that specific point wasn't part of your or the council's objection?
It's not, no. It is really the size difference of the turbines. There's such a differential. But actually, also, viewpoint 1 is quite interesting because you do see them together. So you're seeing them, I think Mr. Denny was mentioning that it appears as a single wind farm. I would dispute that that is the experience that you're going to get from the A95 because as you go further along, more into Moray, this isn't in Moray, this viewpoint. And viewpoint 10 at the Ballindalla junction is probably a good example of that. It shows that there's a dislocation that occurs. Viewpoint 10, yeah. That's it, isn't it? Yes, well, it's interesting. As you're driving along the A95, you do get glimpses of the existing wind farm as you're driving along, not just at the distillery at Tormore. But this is where the extension, you've got the two turbines that are appearing very close to Roy's Hill, just as the traffic is slowing down on that very tight bend that you get at Ballandara. So I think that's one of the locations where I consider it doesn't look like an integrated wind farm, in my opinion.
And final question was the applicants offered, if I considered it essential, to delete turbine 1. Although Mr. Dennett explained that he's not advocating that, he's just saying that, that would make some differences. I wondered if, A, what you thought the differences would be, but B, in particular, are you suggesting, I don't think you are, that there would be any adverse consequences to this composition or whatever from doing that? So any benefits, but also any disbenefits?
I haven't considered that in great detail. There would be some improvement, particularly in close views from some of the properties with deleting turbine 1. It does appear to be the larger turbine in many views in that area. It's also one of the turbines that contributes to that spilling down effect, although there is another turbine near it. I can't remember the number of it, which also contributes to that. But I think it would have to be, there need to be some care taken if, just to look at the what the consequences are of removing that turbine in terms of overall spacing and balance between the spacings of turbines within the scheme. So looking at it from other viewpoints, not just deleting it just on its own without sort of looking at the design again, perhaps.
You've not identified any particular problem?
I
no.
haven't.
Okay.
No.
And I could do that if I were minded to do that. I could
yes.
put my thumb over. Okay. Thank you. That was it from me. Thank you very much. Ms. Scott, do you have any? Yes.
I've just got a couple of questions. One is just really a point of clarity in relation to the Council Committee report and recommendations, which I think, given the confusion between myself and Mr. Chinnick yesterday, is either CD 26 or 27. It's the actual committee report. But it was just, I think you made a comment there that visual confusion was not mentioned in the Council's reasons for refusal. It actually is in reason for refusal 3. And it was just to confirm with yourself, Carol, it says existing turbines at Paul's Hill leading to visual confusion and a lack of cohesiveness between existing and proposed turbines. Does that kind of accord with your view that it doesn't appear as one cohesive development, it appears as a disjointed development, I think was your comment in relation to viewpoint 1?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
And the other was just for the sake of completeness in relation to the fact that we have now asked to lodge the recent document from 2019 from Natural England. I think there was some discussion yesterday between yourself and Mr. Chinnick as a result of APP8 lodged by the applicants in relation to capacity studies and I think there was a discussion about different usage of different words and interaction between sensitivity, landscape capacity. It was just to see if you wanted to make any comment in relation to this document and APP8 to clarify your position on the different wordings.
Okay.
You mean the new document we haven't seen yet?
But I think it's in relation to the questions that you were raising on APP8.
But if you restrict it to that, that's fine. But then let's go into the new document.
Okay.
I think APP8 raises landscape capacity and landscape sensitivity, and I think there was quite a bit of discussion about the interchangeability of those phrases yesterday, and it was just to see if there's anything you want to add to the points raised.
Okay. Well, in terms of APP8, which is from SNH's website, I think it updates to a degree the terms, what is meant by the terms sensitivity, susceptibility and capacity under that heading. Interestingly, what it doesn't do is it doesn't update, because it looks like it's been issued quite recently or updated in part, but it doesn't amend what is meant by capacity, because it says right at the top under landscape capacity study under the picture, this approach assesses a landscape's sensitivity and capacity to accept a particular type of change or development without significant effects on its character. That follows on from the cross-examination yesterday from Mr. Trinick about capacity and significant effects of wind farm development in particular. And the other point probably I should say is about susceptibility. I think it is semantics. We, in the landscape capacity study, we've used the term sensitivity, but it is the same as susceptibility to a degree as it's outlined in the guidelines for landscape and visual impact assessment, GLVIA 3. We don't consider landscape value in the study, and it's quite clear that we haven't taken into account, for example, landscape designations or other sort of recognised values. But I think it's just using a different term. We've looked at a number of, we've looked at criteria, landscape and visual criteria, which together are key sort of factors influencing sensitivity.
Can I just dive in? Because I'm still trying to catch up with the latest GLVIA ever-increasing refinement of terms and things. But am I right in thinking sensitivity now is, that was far too easy, it's now a combination of susceptibility and value. So the modifier would be the value component. And as you haven't applied that, you're saying effectively they're synonymous, sensitivity and susceptibility. I forgot the word.
It's a bit more complicated than that,
right.
Even because GLVIA 3 is quite clear in saying that landscape sensitivity studies which aid sort of planning, spatial planning, for example, that's not the same as doing a landscape and visual impact assessment of a specific development. So a sensitivity or capacity study looks at a type of development, whereas a landscape and visual impact assessment is looking at a specific proposal. But I think with APP8, I think what SNH is attempting to do is just play catch up with the changing use of terms in respect of susceptibility and sensitivity, and just clarifying what they mean by capacity as well.
That's me, thank you. And it was just to reaffirm what I said earlier. If it's possible, if we could maybe have an adjournment of 15 to 20 minutes to allow us to sort out the documents and let Mrs. Anderson leave, that would be really helpful.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks, Mr. Anderson. Pretty good timing, actually. We are now 25 to... So we say 10 to 12. We will come back, and as proposing, Mr. Bonzio will be going on next. Thank you.
Is representing himself and his wife Fiona, who's on my right, and Sport of Scotland Limited, which is their company. Mr. Bonzio, good morning still.
Good morning.
You should have with you your recognition, your inquiry report on this topic, and Mr. Denny's inquiry report.
Correct.
And certain productions which we'll come to.
Yes.
Could I invite you please to read your recognition, and I'll try not to interrupt you.
Good morning. I'm Jörg Bonzio, and I live at Koglas, Knockando, with my family, where I have worked in tourism for the past 23 years. My previous professional experience relates to working in mountain military and rescue service, tourism, and conservation in the Alps and Tanzania. My credentials are before the inquiry as part of my hearing statement on business and socio-economics, as these have informed my current perspectives on the value of landscape in general and to tourism in particular. This precognition presents our case, which is based on our findings on the landscape and visual impact of the proposal on the amenity of our home, associated business premises, and surrounding landscape. Our findings lead us to conclude that these effects will be of such overall significance that it will be adversely and seriously affect both our living conditions and way of earnings a living at Koglas. Our findings fundamentally differ from those of the applicant's environmental statement, the additional information, and the LVIA inquiry report of Mr. Brian Denny. In particular, our findings differ on residential amenity and visual and landscape impact, including cumulative impact, which we find to be highly subjective and inaccurate. To inform our conclusion, we have completed our own residential visually amenity study, including landscape and visual impact at 3.5 kilometers. We have also completed a 10-kilometer local study area, which includes our company, Sporting Scotland Limited's area of operation. Within this 10-kilometer area, we have visited the AI viewpoints and then considered relevant text and cumulative visualizations of the IA, which we have found deficient in a number of respects. In particular, we found that many of the visualization distort accurate portrayal of the overall cumulative scenario and were ultimately not useful in our CVLI considerations. As a result, Dr. Thomas Goff and I have taken photos to produce photo montage to support our inquiry statement. In addition, the AI's accompanying text is often subjective in its manner of expression. It is also based on a reductionist approach throughout that ultimately reduces the effects of the proposed Paulshill 2 wind farm individually and cumulative in cumulative scenarios. The evidence of the applicant's LVIA inquiry report by Mr. Denny supports this reductionist approach. Our analysis leads us to conclude that this reductionist approach is illogical. Further, our analysis supports our opinion that the IA approach and the LVIA inquiry report have depreciated the cumulative landscape and visual effects of the proposal on local protective landscape of high recreational value, such as the Spey Valley AGLV, Candidate CSLA, and Moray Landmark Hills Royce Hill, Ben Rinnes CSLA, the Conwell Hills, Ben Agan, and the Cromdale Hills. Our findings support our view that the IA and the LVIA inquiry report significantly reduce the sensitivity of the recreational and cultural value of the designated Malt Whisky Trail, a unique sense of place associated with Bayside whisky tourism. Astonishingly, the Malt Whisky Trail is not referred to either in the IA or the LVIA inquiry report. Therefore, we have applied an approach which is logical to us. This addresses the cumulative effects by assessing the combined effects of wind farms that are operational, consented, or in planning. Then we have assessed the contribution of the proposed Paulshill 2 wind farm to these combined effects. With regard to the applicant's LVIA inquiry report, we disagree with judgment on the effects of the proposal on local landscape, including designations as detailed in our LVIA inquiry statement as Moray Landmark Hill, Royce Hill, Alt Arder Valley, Upper Knockando, LCT 11, and the Spey Valley AGLV. Our photomontage document number 2 is supporting evidence of impact of the proposal on the local landscape. We disagree with the LVIA inquiry report's challenge to Royce Hill as a landmark feature and statement such that it is, quotation, unimportant in the local landscape. In addition to its significant MCLS Moray Landmark Hill designation, the hills with an Ordnance Survey trig point is an indication of its prominence in the landscape. This popular hill has an Ordnance Survey access track to the summit with panoramic 360-degree views to Cairngorms, Ben Rinnes, Moray Firth, and over the Spey Valley, all confirming its prominent landscape position. Our photomontages, document number 2 for Royce Hill Summit, Alt Arder Valley, Upper Knockando, Archiston, and Cadoo, all show the landmark hill's prominence in the local landscape and importance to its skylines. The applicant's inquiry report, paragraph 8.19, states in relation to the Coglas holiday cottage that seeing turbines is not offensive or unacceptable. We disagree. It is unacceptable for a holiday letting cottage in a remote location to have dominant turbines in its principal views, not its rear views. To our agent, Unique Cottages, the unique selling points of our 5-star FIFO rated cottage are as, quotation, a Highland hideaway with uninterrupted views from the large double-glazed picture windows are quite stunning, and if the cottage delights you, the surroundings will blow you away. Roe and red deer, hare, grouse, buzzard, and hen harriers are all frequently to be seen, while in springtime the vicinity is a prime breeding ground for curlews and oyster catchers. These USP attributes in the cottage's view and surroundings will be removed if the proposal goes ahead. The cottage will no longer meet our guests' expectations. The major magnitude of change brought about by the proposal will extinguish our holiday cottage business, as detailed in our RVAS in Chapter 3 or our LVIA inquiry report. The off, yes, thank you. The inquiry report's proposal to the reporter that the applicant is willing to accept the deletion of turbine 1 as a planning condition, it stated 9 times to bring about some reduction in visual effects on Coglas and the Alt Arder Valley, as well as Upper Knockando and the Spey Valley AGLV. The suggested possible deletion of turbine 1 seems a substantial suggested condition in a planning application for a mere 7 turbines. We conclude that the suggested deletion of turbine 1 is an acknowledgement of the proposal's insensitive siting resulting in serious visual impact, which is sufficiently adverse to change our living conditions and the surrounding local landscape character, so that Coglas would become an unattractive and unpleasant place in which to live. Furthermore, we consider Chapter 10, Reduction in Effects, would arise from the omission of turbine 1 from the scheme to be a confirmation of the extent of the detrimental effects on core glass, the Alt Ade Valley and Royce Hill. The fact that such a measure is considered must be seen as essentially contradicting all the inquiry report judgment on residential amenity at core glass, that the proposal would not be quotation so prominent, dominant, or extensive to the extent it would become an undesirable place to live. The inquiry report does not consider cumulative visually and landscape impact on core glass, which would logically magnify the major and significant effects. The LVIA report refers to the cottage as a temporary residence. This is not for a landscape architect to determine. Our properties are interchangeable for our use, and the cottage is a permanent structure. We correct Mr. Denny on paragraph 9.8. We offer no adventure or sporting activities at core glass itself, as I explained on his site visit. The activities offered at core glass are fishing at the trout pond, archery and falconry, which, contrary to his opinion, do benefit from wildness, tranquility and focus on the landscape. We cannot hold shooting events at core glass itself. It would be a noise nuisance for our holiday cottage guests and neighbors. Events for small groups of up to 6 guests, clay shooting, are held at the event grounds on the moor behind core glass, some 700 meters from the proposal. Events are held at our other site at Knockando Cross for larger groups, which also will be adversely affected by the proposal and cumulatively by all those in application and the overall combined scenario. Again, at paragraph 9.10, in the context of our business, the quotation deletion of turbine 1 from the scheme is something the applicant would be willing to accept with the assumption that the concerns in relation to their property would be further diminished. The repeated suggestion of deletion of turbine 1 only serves to demonstrate to us that the applicant acknowledges the major magnitude of change and significance of the visual and landscape impact on core glass and our businesses, which would make our living condition and means of earning a living intolerable. However, this is not surprising, as the adverse visual effects of turbine further to the east are well understood by the applicant. In 2001, in its environmental constraints for Paul's Hill, Natural Power mapped the detrimental visual impact of turbines further to the east and delineated a visual exclusion area specifying, quote, no turbines further east of this line to minimize localized visual effects. Map 2, site layout and access track mapping including environmental constraints in Environmental Statement, Volume 2, Non-Technical Summary, September 2001. Turbine 1, 2 and 4 are outside the visual exclusion area. Despite Royce Hill being the subject of many of the inquiry report's assertions, it is notable in Mr. Denny's consideration in the vicinity of the site and in the context of the right to roam within Scotland, he has not considered the denial of access to walkers to the Ordnance Survey access route to the Ordnance Survey trig point on the summit of Moray landmark Royce Hill, despite this issue being raised in our objection to the applications and our statements, which Mr. Denny acknowledges having read in his report. Finally, we live on the Paul's Hill wind farm HMP boundary, and we do not understand the current SNH position on LVIA, CLVIA, whereby embedded mitigation for the rivers Spey, SAC, and the Hen Harrier continue to take precedence, even though the HMP area has been significantly and perhaps irreversibly changed for the worse following the 2019 wildfires. It is incomprehensible to us that the exact areas to be subject to the HMP have not yet been identified. Given the bearing that the HMP has on the LVIA and CVLIA, we do not understand why the SNH recommended further mitigation reflecting the guidance of the Moray Landscapes Capacity Study. It is not now under consideration in the context of the CVLI additional information. It is certainly relevant environmental information for this application. We conclude that the case for refusal on individual and cumulative landscape and visual impact and on residential amenity grounds is absolutely clear.
Thank you. If I may be permitted, sir, a few supplementary questions. Prior to writing the recognition, you wrote an inquiry report.
Yes.
Which is before the inquiry. I don't want to go through them, but can we see in that report that you have analyzed each of the visualizations that you had at that time?
Correct.
And you include your own comments there?
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to go through them today from there. Now, some supplementary matters, if I may. First of all, picking up on the visual effects on core glass as you see them, and the changes to the skyline looking out from the cottage in particular, but also from around your house. We are told by the environmental statement, I think, that the views are screened and heavily filtered. Now, there have been some recent changes there. Can you tell us what they are?
Correct. We have, on the 17th and 18th of August, our entire southern and southwestern tree belt of over 2,000 trees has been felled. So that affects the whole access road to our property from the entrance gate right to the parking area and the cottage.
I don't know what questions you'll be asked by my learned friend, but has the felling of the trees anything to do with this inquiry?
No, that that was in planning since over 2 years.
And you need a license for felling, don't you?
Yes.
And you had a license?
Yes.
And do you propose to replant?
There is an obligation, and but we have already in the front field a lot of round trees, which also does not, or is a cumulative trees already to what is required to be planted. I do not need to plant and not intend to plant any fir trees. We intend to plant scrub willow, which is very rare in Scotland, and we want to increase this habitat.
Why in particular that species?
Because they are in our local area, they're there, and they become rarer and rarer, and that is the reason we wanted to plant these.
Now, the environmental statement goes on to talk about the geographical extent of views. It says in particular, not dominant, that's to say the proposal, not dominant to core glass, owing to the limited geographical extent, together with the oblique angle that would be experienced from the access road. What comment do you have on that?
I disagree with this comment, as through the felling of the tree belt, it is not an oblique angle anymore. It is more or less a direct angle to the proposal.
Can you help us with the height above sea level of core glass?
Core glass is 260 meters above sea level.
And the lowest turbine?
The lowest turbine is 330 meters.
And the highest...
400, that is ground level of the...
Of course.
And the highest turbine is a ground level of 460 meters.
Now, what do you say about the importance of an oblique angle of the view? I'm not quite sure what's meant by that. What's your comment?
Oblique angle is either parallel or front on.
We're told by the environmental statement that what you will see from core glass, whether or not there are trees, is the product of a carefully designed layout. What do you say to that?
We disagree with the word carefully designed, because of the offer of a deletion of turbine 1. That doesn't sound to us as a carefully designed layout.
Now, you heard the evidence yesterday about the mapping that was done in 2001 when Paul's Hill 1 was built, and we looked at the production, which I think should be behind tab 3, sir, in your productions. You don't need to go to it. What did you understand the purpose of that map to be?
That basically is restrict further development to the east of that demarcated line.
Yeah. And can you say why?
Because it has a detrimental effect on Koglas and also on the wider landscape of the Alt Ader Valley and right down to this bay.
Without this proposal, does Paul's Hill 1 have the same effect on Koglas and the Alt Ader Valley?
No, at the moment we do not see any turbines at all. We hear occasionally noise, and in the Alt Ader Valley you see only the turbine tips, because it is very well contained on Paul's Hill.
The blades hill, the blade tips.
Yeah. But at Koglas we don't see any turbines.
And the Paul's Hill 1 turbines are what height to blade tip?
100 meter.
Yeah. And here we have proposed 149 meters.
Correct.
One is shorter. Is that right?
Yes.
I think it's 134, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you say, Mr. Bonzio, about the proposed, that's not fair, what do you say about the idea that turbine 1 might be deleted from the proposal by means of a planning condition if the reporter was minded to do that?
It is for that since the application is only done for a mere 7 turbines, it is quite astounding that 1 turbine, 1/7, they are happy to do that.
Well, leaving aside economic questions, would the removal of T1, turbine 1, in your mind make a difference to what you see approaching Koglas and from your residence and from the cottage?
No, because turbine 2 is equally detrimental.
In what way?
Visually, seeing mostly nearly the whole turbine from top to bottom with a hub as well.
Is visible?
Yes.
You heard what Mr. Denny had to say yesterday about the need to reach a threshold of making the premises, the affected premises, an unpleasant or unattractive place to live. You heard that evidence yesterday, and the reference to the so-called tests. What would be the effect of this proposal on where you live?
It would have a huge effect, as my wife and I, we live since 20 years at Koglas, and we are outdoor people. We are not web designers or office bound. We using all the curtilage and more or less the whole property Koglas in one way or the other. So we would be hugely affected by that proposal.
In what way would you be affected?
Visually, as well as noise. Don't discuss noise.
Well, we're not discuss noise today,
Yes.
but so it's the visual effect of the proposal that would trouble you. Is that a correct understanding?
That is us and our guests as well.
Okay. Now, you made reference in your precognition to clay pigeon shooting some 700 meters from the house, as I understand it.
No, 700 meters from the proposal.
Beg your pardon, 700 meters from the proposal. And do you have a shooting ground there where
Yes,
you're
correct.
able to fire off clay pigeons and whatnot.
Yes.
Yeah. How big is that area?
It is not a specified area. I reckon it's in the extent, it has no clear boundaries. I guess it's in the region of 30 acres, which land is available to us.
And that land is made available to you for that purpose?
Correct.
Can you estimate for me the frequency with which you make use of it?
I would say not more than 20 times a year.
Now,
Clay
you also made reference to another location,
Yes,
which you call Knockando Cross. I think it had a different name on the
correct.
on the map. I think so. You've probably been there, have you? So
This is the place. Is it Oak Hill?
Yeah,
the
yes,
local
Oak
name.
Hill, yeah.
I haven't actually been there, no, and I was going to ask you where that was, but I might not need to now.
well, perhaps you tell the reporter where it is first.
Oak Hill is on the minor road Knockando to Dallas, 3 miles outside, exactly 3 miles outside Knockando. On the, yes.
We can perhaps provide a good reference for that for you, if that would be helpful. And what happens there?
There we have larger groups which come in up to 60-seater buses. We have several instructors, and we divide this group into several teams, up to 5 teams, 6 teams if it has to be. And there they do off-road driving, clay shooting, rifle shoot. Off-road driving, clay shooting, archery, rifle shooting, highland games, occasionally. And we rotate, and we're going to be equally affected at that new site by the proposal. Cumulatively, also by this proposal.
Can we think for a moment, please, about the predicted cumulative view, which is part of this inquiry? There is a judgment, I forget now where we find it, I think in the environmental statement, that there is no additional cumulative effect from Paul's Hill 2. Do you agree with that?
No.
At the moment, from core glass, what turbines can you see?
The only turbines we can see to the east, which is the hill of Taui. I believe it's 23 kilometers away, and that is the only turbines we can see.
23 kilometers. So is that significant to you?
Pardon?
Is it significant?
23 kilometers, it is, I would say, it's not significant to us.
Thank you. Can you say what you expect to see if Clashgar and Rothis 3 are built in terms of numbers?
Koglas would be basically half encircled at 180 degrees by Paul's Hill 2.
I think that's 5 turbines.
Correct. 11 turbines from Clashgar and 14 turbines from Rothis 3.
So that's 30 turbines.
Yes.
Sure. The residential amenity study, which is presented by the applicants, identifies a worst-case moderate magnitude of visual change from Paul's Hill 2. It's described as the balance between the worst-case scenario experienced from your cottage and the heavily filtered views through the dense mixed woodland screening across the rest of the property. I'd like to ask you about the heavily filtered views. Is the tree belt to the edge of your property an adequate screen?
No, it is not.
And why not?
There are a few scattered trees in the region of, I don't want to put a figure on, but in the region of probably 20, 30 trees, and a small clump of Scots pine. The others are predominantly birch trees, which have all reached age of 25. And in my experience, the forester, they, especially in that exposed prevailing wind, they will not stand longer as another 5 years. And secondly, it is not in the applicant what happened to trees as we have demonstrated with the clear fell of the other tree belt.
Okay, thank you. I need to get an understanding, Mr. Bonzio, please, of the way that you say the proposal, that's the Paul's Hill 2 proposal, will or may affect your way of earning a living. You've described your business in detail in the inquiry report. We know what you do, and Mrs. Bonzio does, with your guests, and you've told us today that you bring in instructors and no doubt colleagues to help when you have large groups. I need to understand how you believe that way of earning a living would be affected.
Because our groups, whether they are private groups or from the whiskey industry, come from all over the world, and they come to the northeast of Scotland, to the Speyside, predominantly because of the whiskey industry.
So these are people who come to the whiskey distillers for business reasons. Is that right?
Partly, yes, but partly to also experience a Scottish landscape, and especially the Highlands or our Highland area, to experience the area where the whiskey is made.
Okay. You've included at tab 5 a page from a production. I'm not sure what it is. It's called the Malt Whiskey Trail. This is Malt Whiskey Country.
Yes.
And first of all, tell us, where does this come from?
That comes from the Speyside. Hang on a second. It's the Spirit of Speyside Whiskey Festival.
Right, so it's a promotional document, is it?
Yes.
And because Mr. Denny hasn't dealt with the Malt Whiskey Trail at all, can you tell the inquiry, please, what you understand it to be? What is it? What is it about?
Basically, the Malt Whiskey Trail maps out in the northeast of Scotland as far as Huntly, Elgin, Nairn, and Grantown-on-Spey. So where predominantly all the existing turbines are positioned, they point out all the major, or point out every distillery there is.
And so this map on tab 5 is just an extract, is it, from some promotional literature?
They are using that to get visitors to come to this area and have a clearer picture of the area and its distilleries.
I think at tab 6 there's a similar map, but perhaps more detail, is that right?
Yes.
Showing roads and bus routes, as well as quite a significant number of distilleries.
Yes.
Is that right?
Correct.
Now, why is this important? I know that we're going to have a hearing about socioeconomics tomorrow, but just from the point of view of landscape and visual impact.
Because of, as I mentioned, visitors from abroad, a big part of their, and I know it because I talk to people, to our guests, they want to experience the distilleries in combination with the landscape, with the Scottish landscape. They could, some of them are on a commercial basis in Scotland, and they could easily purchase their whiskey online. They do not have to come to Scotland to get their whiskey, to Russia, to Japan, Korea, or wherever.
And do you deal in a different way with people who come to visit the whiskey distilleries for commercial purposes as distinct from tourists, whiskey
No.
tourists? Can you help us to understand the proportion of people who come, as it were, referred by the distilleries You've told us that in the statement. And people who come as tourists.
At the moment, I would say 60% is from the whiskey industry, the other are private groups.
Private groups. Do you have any competition for this work?
There is several competition. Yes.
At tab 7, please tell the inquiry what you've tried to do here.
Is that the one with the foil? That
yes.
is basically, we established a map of operational, under construction, consented, and scoping wind farms in relation to the malt whisky route.
I see. So the orange shaded area is what?
In scoping.
Scoping. The red dots are what?
The red dots are, this is a Klaschgauer proposal. Are you referring to?
I just want to understand, because the legend on the left is not crystal clear. Forgive me. I just need it to be explained to the reporter. We've got operational, under construction, consented, application, and scoping.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, are you trying to show all of the wind farms inside the circle, inside the study area, or just some of them?
At the time of when we produced this map, those were all relevant in operational, under construction, consented, or application and scoping.
When did you make the map?
At home.
No, when did you make the
Oh,
map?
when? Sorry, I thought where. That map was 2018.
So it's relatively recent.
Yes.
Could we think now about something else? You've heard Mr. Denny and encouraged by Mr. Trinick talk about Roy's Hill and its relative unimportance in the area and the downplaying of its landmark qualities, whatever they are. What do you say about that?
I disagree with both of them and their statements. Mr. Trinick, he mentioned a lot of Moray landmark hills, or what he calls dominant hills, but we are talking as quite a localized area, and therefore Roy's Hill is a very dominant hill due to its position, juxtaposition of Ben Rinnes, raising up from the Spey Valley right up to the top of Roy's Hill. And Mr. Denny, in his inquiry report, he mentioned that there is not not of any importance, that hill. We disagree with it because
Would you mind repeating that part of the answer?
hang on, may I quickly? He mentioned that it's not considered that Roy's Hill represents that kind of landmark hill which is of the most importance in the local landscape. It is, because he mentioned local landscape. It's illogical to me that hills are mentioned which are 50, 60 kilometers away at the coast, Cullen or wherever. That does not affect the local landscape. They are unimportant in the local landscape. However, Roy's Hill is important in the local landscape. And as Mr. Denny mentioned several other hills towards the coast, if you're driving the Malt Whiskey Trail, the B9102, it is like in the Alps Valley, you have two mountains, can be a certain height, there can be double the height just in the second row of mountains, and you will not see them, because the mountains in the immediate vicinity of the valley floor are the important one. Secondly, correct. On one side, you have Ben Rinnes sloping down geological right down to the River Spey, and on the opposing side is Royce Hill in the same position, rising up from the Spey right to the summit. Yes. Yes. It is very easy accessible. There is, from the B9102, there's a public road going right up to the start, which is denied access for pedestrian. I want to paint it out again. And there's also some limited parking, but there's parking, either ample parking at the bottom of this road. There's a 1.3 kilometer access track to Royce Hill. So, and it's very well known. We live since 23 years on the side of Royce Hill, so we see how many people are using this hill. It is very important. Yes. From both sides, from the bottom and the top. Several times, yes. Apparently some rockfall, although there are big wire mats all along the cutting. And that was the original access track onto Royce Hill, or part of it. There was a small loop at the bottom. No. Yes. Yes. No. They are distinct to the side of Royce Hill, spilling into 5 turbines spilling into the Alt Ader Valley. And they are not contained or covered by Royce Hill. They are clearly in the Alt Ader Valley. Correct.
I'd like to ask you again, please, about from the additional information, the cumulative visualizations. Are you happy with the quality of what's presented?
No.
Were you able to find any visualization, including all 3 wind farms?
Possibly not on one sheet of paper, no.
I think your criticism, which has been confronted, is that you're always worried that Paul's Hill is in the center of the picture, and you heard the reason for that.
Yes.
Does that make sense to you?
Not really. If I recall our pre-inquiry meeting, where it was set out the task that the applicant should provide adequate cumulative impact assessment, which we were hoping to get also photo montages, where the applicant only provided cumulative wireline overlays.
And do you have those?
Not with me, they are on the computer, the wirelines, but we produced and
No, I'll come to those in a minute.
So, I don't have them with me. They are
those for you?
That was in that big zip file.
Could I ask you to look now at the booklet of photomontages which were lodged yesterday?
Yes.
Can we just take these in order?
Yeah.
And I'd like you to just page through them one at a time and explain what we're looking at.
Picture 1 is a view baseline photograph from Ben Rinnes. It is a photograph which has been not pasted together. It's an actual view from Ben Rinnes, made with a digital camera, 3/4 frame camera, with a 30mm lens, which in digital terms is the equivalent of roughly 45mm analog lens. Okay. On the left-hand side of the picture, you can see clearly Royce Hill, very distinct, with the 7 turbines all basically covering the whole of Royce Hill. And then you see in the background, behind it, Paul's Hill 1.
Now, just to help me, this is a photograph taken by Mr. Goff.
By myself.
By yourself. Do you have expertise in photography?
I was photographic guide, but I would say I'm not a professional, but I was a photographic guide in Tanzania, so my knowledge is sufficient to take a photograph like that. Okay.
Moving on to the second page.
In this picture, the applicant, Mr. Denny, yesterday said that we made a mistake with the coordinates, and he had to correct it to what is in red, proposed Paul's Hill. Yeah. I disagree with that assumption, because our coordinates, as in photograph 1, and even in photograph 2, our coordinates place those white turbines still on Royce Hill, not on a hill, which I believe is Cairn Chubai, which is 5.75 kilometers away from the summit of Royce Hill.
All right. Well, to be fair to Mr. Denny, he wasn't claiming that Appendix 2 was accurate. He simply explained what he did yesterday.
Yes, but
your evidence is that what is shown here is 5 3/4 kilometers away from Royce Hill.
Yes.
In a northwesterly direction, I think. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then let's just try and work through these.
Yes.
So number 3.
Number 3, Mr. Denny claims that they have then corrected the wrong position, which he corrected the wrong, or he created the wrong position on that hill further away, and they corrected it back to Paul's Hill, which we all along had it on the photograph number 1, our baseline photograph. Secondly, then there were big parts of the skyline blanked out, all the hills where it was before on page 2, the photograph where the proposed Paul's Hill apparently were there is blanked out or manipulated out of the picture.
Okay, so that's the significance of the red lines.
Yes.
You put the red lines on
yes.
On the photograph, is that right? All right, number 4.
Picture 4, Cairn-Gillichar. That photograph has been taken with a camera on top of the trig point. Again, it's just one photograph showing the existing Paul's Hill 1, and Mr. Goff then put in the additional turbines of Paul's Hill 2 in it. Then on the following page, according to Mr. Denny, there are basically with this wind farm software and with the landscape markers, I can't exactly recall the terminology he used, they produced, I think, and I worked with maps since an early age, and I know a little bit about this depression is simply not there, as you can see in our baseline photograph. He claims it on the geographical or topographical markers within the software. And then what he, also in his comments, then he corrects it in the Appendix 3, which is not only completely different from our baseline photograph, but from their own Appendix 2 photograph. A landscape is a landscape. in the photograph, it does not change. I only can assume then your software, that the software is faulty.
Well, of course, that's heresy to a landscape architect, but that's your assumption. Can I just take it that you are the author of all of the comments?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. All right, number 7, which is the B9102, the Malt Whisky Trail, west of Archerstown.
Yes.
What are we looking at there?
We are looking at the proposal, Paul's Hill 2, and in the background, Paul's Hill 1.
So the turbines which are montaged in here are both the existing and the proposed,
Yes.
but shown in the same color.
Yes.
And number 8?
Number 8 is what there's one Appendix 3 missing. However, the applicant seems to move the wireline overlay either to the right or to the left in the picture to correct it then in Appendix 3, basically coming back to our baseline photograph, which doesn't make sense to me.
I think there's a textual correction in the text. You want to change Appendix 3 to Appendix 2, is that right?
Correct.
All right, and the last 2 pages, 9 and 10?
That is again, it is a picture taken outside Kadu. As you can see in Appendix 2, the wireline overlay has been moved to the left, towards the birch, to the left of the picture, just to be put back in Appendix 3, a correction to our baseline photograph. So I don't know where that comes that they had to move it in the Appendix 2, if they corrected to what our original photograph showed all along.
And are you happy with the position of Paul's Hill 2, as shown there in red? This is in the Appendix 3 photograph. Or do you not know?
I haven't formed. We were taking, or I was taking the broader landscape issue with the visualization.
Right. I said the last 2, but in fact the last 2 are numbers 12 and 13. I think. No, there's some more as well here.
It is taken from the Upper Knockando.
This is from Upper Knockando, yes?
Yes.
And again, that's your photograph.
Yes.
Showing?
Showing the Paul's Hill 2 turbine with a few of Paul's Hill 1 turbines in the background. Mm-hmm. And in Appendix 2, again, the wireline overlay has been moved this time to the right. And in Appendix 3, that you would see it has been moved to our baseline photograph. The position of the turbine of Paul's Hill 2 are more or less identical bar 2 to our baseline photograph.
Okay. Then we have, I think, the Old Harder Valley.
Yes.
Again, your photograph.
Yes.
Dr. Goff's montage.
Yes.
And that's Paul's Hill 2.
Yes.
So where is it taken from?
That has been taken just before 50 meters before the Cullyburn Bridge.
Okay. And what do we see in Appendix 2?
Well, this demonstrates very clearly how Paul's Hill 2 is spilling into the Old Harder Valley. And again, there was a wireline discrepancy with the wireline overlay, but more to the point, it demonstrates just under turbine 1 and 2, which are the 2 turbines to the right, Koglas is just below with a tree belt.
Just below the tree belt?
Yes.
And then we have Royce Hill, summit of Royce Hill.
Yes.
And once again, your photograph.
Yes.
It's figure 7 viewpoint, yeah?
Yep.
And what do you see at...
You see the
Append-
you see the dominance and overbearing virtue of the new proposal. And to critique their visualization, again, Mr. Goff is very experienced with the photolite, and his turbines, I'm pretty sure, are in the exact position where shown there. However, the applicant put them in between Paul's Hill 1, that is on Appendix 2 and Appendix 3.
So can I summarize this? For these reasons, are you, forgive me leading you, but I don't think it matters really now, unhappy with these representations so far as cumulative impact is concerned?
Yes, with our representation, yes.
How long have you lived in this locality?
23 years.
Has anybody that you know lived there longer than you?
Probably not since the 1920s. That as far as we can date it back and how long people have lived at Koglas.
But yourself, 20 years, 23
23 years.
23 years. Right. So may I just have a moment? I wonder if you could take up Mr. Denny's inquiry report, please,
Yes.
and go to page 53, 54. Paragraph 9.8.
Yes.
You have that?
Yes.
The effect on the property at Corglass in terms of residential amenity is assessed both on the main house and the holiday let cottage as well as its curtilage. Matters of tourism or the commercial business are not addressed here, and these are addressed in the policy statement. It is noted, however, that the activities carried out at Corglass are adventure and sporting activities not dependent on wildness, tranquility, or with a focus on the landscape. We've covered this point to some extent. But is that a correct statement?
No, it is not correct. And during his first visit to Koglas, I pointed it out to Mr. Denny and explained to him the activities we do at Koglas.
Okay. Mr. Bonzo, thank you. I have no more questions just now. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Trinick.
I wouldn't want this inquiry to end without making a last effort to secure a common understanding of what we're looking at in terms of cumulative impacts. I'm not asking you to agree with our views of impact, but I remain concerned that perhaps you'll think we're looking at one thing when we're looking at another, put it that way. I understand that you are concerned about Clashgar and Rothers 3 as well as about Paul's Hill 2.
Yes.
I fully understand that, and that is, I don't criticise you for that concern. How could I? But you do, I think, understand now from Mr. Denny in his explanation that his role is to look at the effects of Paul's Hill 2, both in terms of the impacts of that development on a series of evolving baselines, and then in terms of its contribution to an overall totality of effect. You understand that?
Yes.
It is not his role to evaluate the contribution that Clashgow or Rothers 3 might individually or together make to a baseline including Paul's Hill. Are we agreed on that?
Yes.
Good. I'll come back to that. Just a couple of points in your inquiry report, if I may. And you might also get out the Environmental Statement, Chapter 6. I don't know if you have that to hand. If that could be provided, please. I want you to turn to page 664.
Yes.
And to deal, perhaps to wrap up on the nature of cumulative assessment point, if you look at the left column on page 664, the heading of cumulative visual effect, moderate...
664.
664. Thanks. Left column, cumulative visual effect, says moderate, major and significant for scenario 1 developments. That's therefore on the existing baseline, owing to potential visibility of proposed development by itself. No additional cumulative visual effect for scenarios 2 and 3. I think that's that comment which has got to you and you don't understand or you don't agree with or whatever. So if I put to you what Mr. Denny is saying there, as best as I understand, then you can tell me if we're still apart. What he's saying is, look, we acknowledge that the impacts of Paul's Hill 2 at Cordlass on the existing baseline are significant. That awful word we keep using and in lots of contexts. But once you add Rothers 3 and Clashgower into the baseline, if you do that, the impacts of Paul's Hill 2 don't make it any worse. That's all he's saying.
Yes. I understood that from yesterday.
And you still disagree?
Maybe
Or not?
I understand that the wording is significant and you can't go higher than significant.
No, I'm not really saying that. I too have difficulties sometimes with the methodologies we use and the limits of words, frankly. What I'm saying is, would you disagree with Mr. Denny if he was saying, look, I understand that Paul's Hill 1 is significant in the existing baseline, but looking at Paul's Hill 2 on a baseline including Clashgower and Rothers 3 doesn't make Paul's Hill 2 any worse than it would be on scenario 1 baseline. That's what he's saying.
I still would disagree with him because without Paul's Hill 2, the half encirclement of Coglas wouldn't happen. It would be incomplete. It would be just a smaller section with Clashgower and Rothers 3, whilst the development of Paul's Hill 2 makes it a 180-degree half circle around our property. So I would disagree with that.
Let's, with permission, the topic of Knockando Cross came up, and I think someone's going to produce something to you to show exactly where it is. I was thinking I don't need to produce this because we'll get there somehow else, but we have produced a map, which I'm going to ask someone to show Mr. Campbell now, please, of simply showing factual information based on Knockando Cross. So I think it might help in a number of ways to use this map. Of course. No, not yet, not yet. No. Just stay there from... That's extremely kind. Thank you very much. We'll make that assumption for the purpose of this exercise. I take your point. That's fine. I'll give you a chance to look at the map, Mr. Ponzio, before, although I think you'll be rather more familiar than I will.
Yes, I have the same.
That's absolutely
It's the
fine.
same.
But I'd like you to use the one I've produced, because
Yes.
I'm not just using it to locate Knockando Cross. In the context of the last answer you gave me about 180 degrees,
Yes.
I'd ask you to reconsider that in the sense that not from you can't see Paul's Hill 1 turbine from your property at present.
Correct.
But if you look at Paul's Hill 1 and 2 together,
Yes.
and you look at Clashgower, and you look at Rothes 2 and 3,
Yes.
only in terms of precise views from your property would that 180-degree point apply. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine, as long as we're clear about that. Thank you for that. While we're using that, then, have we correctly located Knockando Cross?
It would be at the end of the track, but more or less correctly, yes. There's a small track going over that old smuggler's trail, or actually it was a cattle trail, so a little bit further up and further to the left, so it's the end of the trail.
So further north
Yes,
and further east?
Further east. Further west, sorry.
Further west, okay.
Yes.
All right.
But
well,
it's more or less
okay.
correct.
I'm happy
We
if
are
you want
talking
to put
about
a extra
150
cross on.
meters.
I'm happy. That's okay. So using this, while we got this map out, I'll just tackle a small point that came up this morning. In terms of the activities you carry out at Knockando Cross, I've heard what you said, and we'll debate impacts on socioeconomics tomorrow. But you've made much, I understand why, of Rothes 3 and Clashgower in your evidence. As a matter of fact, purely as a matter of fact, Knockando Cross is a lot closer to Rothes 3, and it is closer to Clashgower than it would be to Paul's Hill 2.
Correct.
And from Knockando Cross, you would get clear views of both of those other developments, I understand. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think that does it for cumulative. Would you go to your inquiry report, please, at paragraph 361 on page 7. And also keep out page 664 of the environmental statement.
Yeah.
The topic here is, have you, Mr. Bonzio, read what is said correctly? You say in 361, the RVAS states the visual experience of the property takes in rough grassland immediately surrounding the property scattered shrub. This is not accurate. And then you go on to a description of what does immediately surround the property. Can I suggest you have misread what's said? Because what is said in the third sentence of the paragraph under the heading of effect on visual component of living conditions?
Yes.
This is the current visual experience from the property of land outside the property. It's not saying that that's the current visual experience of the property.
Okay, I agree with that.
That's fine. Thanks for that. It's nice to get sort of a small victory anyway.
Yeah.
Would you go to 422 in your inquiry report, please? In 422, you're talking about Roy's Hill as a, quotes, severe constraint in the landscape capacity study, and that's in quotations. And at 432 on page 16, you give a further quotation in severe restraints, fifth line down, in accommodating further development. You know, I've looked at the landscape capacity study in detail, and I've looked at the supplementary guidance in detail. Do prove me wrong, and then you scored a victory, but I can't find that text in either document. I can't find the phrase severe constraints anywhere in the guidance.
Can I pass you on to my wife?
I don't mind informality as long as we get an answer. I'm too archaic to do word search. You can do it if you want, but you crack on. We'll get an answer to that point. I don't mind where the answer comes from, but I think it's important that if there is advice in a document that says this is a severe constraint, and Carol Anderson hasn't drawn our attention to that, then we should know about it. But I can't find it in those documents. We'll see where it is. I want to come on to visualizations, not so that I can get you to agree that someone's right and someone's wrong necessarily, but so we have a common understanding of where we're apart. Firstly, you heard Mr. Denny say yesterday in, I think it was Evidence in Chief, that the montages produced by the method he uses, which are also the method used by Natural Power, same method, Resoft software, etc., have been road tested against actual turbines in the field and found to be accurate. Be it clear, first of all, have you anything to suggest that that's wrong? Have you conducted an exercise of taking the visualizations into the field and judging whether the Paul's Hill 1 turbines are shown correctly?
No.
No. Thank you for that. Would you can use your set, actually, it doesn't really matter. I'll find your set. Excuse me a minute, let's find the visualizations. I've heard what all you said this morning. It concerns me there still seems to be a misapprehension of what the Appendix 2 and Appendix 3 exercises are about, and that's what I want to go to. I'm told on this technical subject that when Mr. Denny's colleagues conducted the exercise which resulted in the Appendix 2 revisions, they used the photograph taken by you. They used the wind turbine coordinates and landform data from Resoft, and they couldn't make the images match up at all. What is shown is clearly inaccurate. So there's no claim that what has been produced in Appendix 2 by Mr. Denny's colleagues is accurate. It's simply that they couldn't make a combination of wind turbine coordinates and landform from Natural Power work with your photograph. Same place, they ended up in different places. Do you I'm not saying, I'm only asking you to accept at this stage, do you understand that's the exercise carried out?
Yes.
Right. So there's no claim that what's in Appendix 2 is accurate. If you turn to Appendix 3, what they did was to play around with the figure and try to move the position of the turbines left to right, up and down, to try and achieve a fit between what Mr. Guff's or Dr. Guff's exercise showed and what our own photomontages, or rather what the landform and coordinate data they used showed. And Appendix 3 is the attempt at the best fit, and it still doesn't work. There's no claim of accuracy there. Do you understand that?
Yes, I do understand what you're saying. However, I disagree with you, because the proposed turbine photomontage are on Royce Hill. Undisputable, they are on Royce Hill. The Paul's Hill 2 turbines are on Royce Hill. Whether I will not claim 100% accuracy, but they are on Royce Hill. Whilst in the proposal of, so no matter what Mr. Dennis' colleagues say, they are on Royce Hill. Whilst on Appendix 2, they are not on Royce Hill. They are on a hill 5.7 kilometers away. And in Appendix 3, they are again on Royce Hill, which our baseline photograph shows all along. That is Royce Hill.
Yes, I understand all of that.
So I don't know how I'm told they are so wrong that they have to correct it in Appendix 2 to a hill 5.7 kilometers away.
Yeah, okay. As I've said, I can only go through this so often. The Appendix 2 exercise, simply seeing if the wind turbine coordinates and landform used by natural power, used for the purposes of our photomontages, can fit with your photograph. You know, I asked them, I said, go and see if it's accurate. Test them. And the answer came back, no, wrong. So Appendix 3, they're wrong because they show the turbines are completely the wrong location. That's the whole point. The exercise in Appendix...
Pardon, which appendix shows the turbine in a complete wrong location? Appendix 2.
Appendix 2.
Yeah, but you produced it, not us.
No, well, hang on, please. The Appendix 2 exercise was to see if... it's to check the accuracy of what you have produced. And the answer came back, it doesn't fit, because the turbines are in completely the wrong location. As you say, 5 kilometers away. But we accept that. That's the product of the exercise. In Appendix 3, yes, by playing around, we could get them to fit on Royce Hill. However, and you've just said it yourself, you don't claim 100% accuracy. But that's the point, Mr. Bonzio. 100% accuracy is important, and we claim 100% accuracy, road-tested in the field against real turbines. They need to be 100% accurate to inform the reporter. That's the whole point.
Correct. I agree with that, but if you compare our baseline photograph with Appendix 3, they are more or less in the right location.
Well, it's
and
more
we are lay people. We do not have expensive software, and that was our whole point of our exercises, that the applicant has not done any cumulative photo montages of all the proposals.
Okay.
That is the reason we attempted
all right.
that exercise.
But I think we've got to the point, more or less, not 100% accurate. That, in our view, matters, and that's why we carried out the exercise. You may want to create an impression, that's up to you. But the purpose of this exercise now is so that I can submit to the reporter, and I will submit to him, to give you a chance to comment on that whereas this exercise is interesting, it does not convey an accurate image of the turbines in the right location, and that matters a great deal. I don't think you're claiming that the turbines are 100% accurate. They're more or less there, not 100%. But that's as good as it gets, isn't it?
That might be. I don't say that they are not 100% accurate. However, if for a visualization exercise, if you're standing on top of Ben Rinnes and see all those turbines, the proposed turbines, for the hiker, for a climber, for a visitor, it doesn't make a difference whether the turbine is there or 10 meters to the right or to the left.
I have your view. The other point that arises here is how you project Paul's Hill in these images, whether you put it in the centre or to the left or the right. I can see what you're saying, why you want to present all three, and it's difficult to do so subject to, well, you can have a roll of paper infinitely long and you'll be able to do it, but it's not very practical. I put the opposite point to you, though. If we presented cumulative images showing Paul's Hill always tucked away to the left of the image and something else centred, I think other people will complain pretty quickly that we weren't assessing Paul's Hill correctly, wouldn't they?
Possibly.
Yep. Thank you. finally, just look at your Appendix 7. Perfectly happy with Appendix 7. It's just I'm rather surprised by the size of Uruk at the scoping stage. I think this is intended to be diagrammatic, is probably the answer, but I don't think Uruk comes anywhere near Paul's Hill. It's way down on Davamore. Am I right?
Again, we do not claim 100% accuracy
That's all
on
right.
the layout.
I understand that. Look, Mr. Bonzio, thanks for putting up my questions. Oh, I'm sorry, there is one more point. I forgot. You said earlier that turbine 2 was as bad as turbine 1 from Cordlas. I just want to explore that. I'm going to commit my usual sin of doing that.
Okay.
So you can see the image I'm looking at. You recall this image?
Yes.
Well, you know better than I do, obviously.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, turbine 1 is at 1.5 or thereabouts
Yes.
kilometres from Cordlas. Turbine 2 is 1.93.
Yes.
I just suggest to you that actually, in terms of magnitude of change, turbine 2 presents something very different to turbine 1.
That is possible. In probably the terminology, how you classify them, you might be right. For us, as a resident, it's affecting us because at the moment we don't see zero turbines.
I understand that point of view. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. I'll probably have some questions. I just need to plug my laptop in, which I realise I hadn't done. It's about to die. Bear with me for a second. Apologies. Right. Many of my questions have already been asked, which is usually the case. One thing I did want to ask, when we went on site on Monday, I think it was, and you showed us some works that you were doing to the Stedding building, I just wondered if you could, I didn't want to ask you then because we weren't in the session, but if you could just explain what you're doing to that building, what it will ultimately become.
At the moment, we had to do a Stedding repair because it has had an asbestos roof on it, and the floor was cracking up, so we had to basically stabilize the building and not that it falls into disrepair.
So am I right in thinking at present it doesn't have planning permission for residential or some other use?
It has no planning permission for residential.
While we were on site, we also saw, well, in fact, it's more or less this viewpoint. We saw the trees. I think you said there's about 30 trees, birch, and
Yes.
your point was I think they don't provide a complete barrier to site or anything like that, and they are within your control. They're not within the applicant's control, so they have no say as to whether you keep them or whatever.
Yes.
What would be your view, and I don't think this is any way a proposal of the applicant, what would be your view if they proposed, or if they were even able to propose, to put some planting behind, so on land that they do control, in terms of the effect on you, if that were to obstruct the turbines? What would you say to that?
I would not like that because we like the open view to the back of the moor as well. That is one of the reasons when we came 23 years ago, we drove up and thought, wow, those views are fantastic.
This isn't a major point or even a major criticism, but I think you said that Mr. Denny hadn't referred to the malt whisky trail as a receptor. I think I did find mention of it in his required report, unless I imagined it, which is possible. He did, in fact, maybe if you have a look at his inquiry report, my note says at 5:14, this is when we find I did imagine it. 5.14, yeah.
Okay, yes, he mentioned the promoted whiskey trail.
So, except he did. He has given it some attention. I think you said he hadn't referred to it at all, and you were very surprised that he hadn't, but he has referred to it there.
Yes.
Final question, really, on the, just so I understand your point, on the wildfire implications. Obviously, I've seen the extent of, I went up to the site and had a good look around. I think you were critical of SNH. As I understand it, well, see if I've understand your point correctly. SNH they made some comments, and we heard about it yesterday, I think it was, about they haven't objected to the scheme. There might be some things that could be changed, but their priorities favour the habitat protection and the hen harriers and things, rather than making changes to the layout for visual terms. Is it your point that what you're saying is if the effect of the wildfires has downgraded the habitat, you think SNH should be focusing more on improving the landscape and visual? Am I understanding your point correctly or totally incorrectly?
Should go on the habitat, because it's, in my view, quite convenient for any developers that there is no habitat anymore, because hen harriers, grouse, birds of prey have moved on, and it is very doubtful whether they ever will return. So it is very convenient that for all the developers that habitat has gone.
If I understand it correctly, now that it has gone, you think that would, or perhaps should have, persuaded SNH to push more for a revision for
Yes.
landscape benefit? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. That was my fault to go, and Mr. Campbell may have some more queries for you.
One of the reporter's questions. Go back to Mr. Denny's inquiry report, please. 514.
Yes.
He says the LVIA, whilst concluding a significant effect, notably considers the importance of the containing hills to the view from the promoted Whiskey Trail, not identifying Royce Hill as important and providing containment or making any other notable contribution. Now, I just want to ask you, arising out of that, can you think about the relationship between Paul's Hill 2 and the Whiskey Trail? What do you say is important about that relationship?
Paul's Hill 2 is not contained by Royce Hill. It's built in the Alder Valley, and you can see that part right up to Archiston, and even then further afield beyond Craigellachie to Malben and Keith.
You a question that I didn't understand. I wonder if I could look at it again. He was explaining Mr. Denny's role to you in the opening of your cross-examination. Mr. Denny's role, he said, is to look at Paul's Hill 2, and then he said, and the impacts on baselines in terms of the overall totality of effect. Now, I wasn't clear whether he was talking about the totality of effect of Paul's Hill 2 or the totality effect of all of the proposals. What did you understand by the question?
I understood of all proposals.
Of all the proposals. That's fine. That can be a submission matter, I think. Thank you very much. I have no more questions.
Thank you. Now you can go. Sorry. It is 1:15. We still have Ms. Mandel to hear from. How hungry are we? Yeah. We could perhaps have a shorter lunch. I don't know how short I can get away with.
One of the hearings this afternoon.
Well, we could. No, I mean, yeah. I'm so surprised by how much progress we've made. How do people feel about that? I mean, I said no, but there's no reason why not. If we had to, actually, we don't have Mr. Temple. No, we're shaking heads.
Templeton, no, I was only going to say if you want to do socio-economics, the council's not involved in that at all, and we could have Mr. Templeton here for tomorrow, but I can't have him here this afternoon.
Okay, so I think can we get away with half an hour for lunch, come back, have Ms. Mandel, then we'll have an early finish and have plenty of time to prepare for tomorrow where we'll get everything done. And then we're off on Friday. How about that? I'm assuming policy first. You no problems with that?
I don't have any problem with it.
Yeah, policy, then socio-economic, then conditions. That's the order in which I put it. Although I was going to say my agenda, such as it is really just a list of documents and things that people have raised.
Yes.
So it's not wonderful. But I was suggesting policy first, and then because I think that will allow the council's man to go if he wishes. But yeah, APP 14 for that latest plan. It's now 20 past. Can we get away with, say, 10 to 2? Is that too short?
I've got to come back to you with a grid reference for Knockando Cross.
Yes,
and also do that word search.
Yeah, I mean, I can do the word search myself, but it'd be nicer if you did it for me. Can we say?
We will do it for you, but I wasn't the author of the document. So
No. She's sitting. Can we say 2 o'clock to come back? Yep, 2 o'clock. Okay, thank you. Ms. Mandel to come and take a seat in the witness. Unique position in not having someone to help you, ask you questions and things. What I would suggest, you can read all of or some of, if you prefer, your recognition. But then if there's any other points maybe that you want to say or that have arisen over the last few days that you wanted to comment on, if you do, then you could do that after you've done that or as you go along, whichever is the easier. Mr. Trinick may then have some questions, as may I. Slightly different procedure, but hopefully we'll get through it. So when you're ready, thanks.
Good afternoon. I am Yvonne Mandel. I reside at Glenorder, 2.5 kilometres from the proposed development. Glenorder is our family home and a holiday property which sells the idyllic Scottish landscape. Glenorder benefits from a serene setting and an elevated position with 360-degree views overlooking moorland, Speyside and Inverness. The proposed development will redefine the visual landscape character of our property, our pleasure gained from our home, and our tourist business's unique selling point, which is landscape. We object to the seemingly endless one-by-one advancement of wind developments, each claiming legitimacy based on the previous. We believe land conservation is equally legitimate in that it also contributes to climate mitigation, public and economic value. The applicant describes several times Speyside as being characterized by wind farms. This logic is not justification to add more, in fact the opposite. This statement strengthens our position that landscapes in Speyside are becoming dominated by wind farms. We understand the goals of renewable energy in Scotland and support Scottish policy in so much as it is balanced in a way that does not destroy long-term landscape value in the process. A significant portion of the applicant's arguments rely on Scotland's climate change policy targets and are presented with a, therefore, it must be approved position and presumption in favour. We do not support the duplicity of the positioning of this argument. Fred Olsen Renewables is part of the bigger Fred Olsen Group, which includes shipping interests and Fred Olsen Energy, an offshore oil drilling company. It is an acceptable global position that fossil fuels have greatly contributed to climate crisis. The applicant leans on statements like, "As First Minister of Scotland, I am declaring that there is a climate emergency," and for the first time, some 195 countries, including the world's largest emitters, have now committed to act together to address climate change and to be held equally accountable. This is playing to the audience in a duplicitous way, given the magnitude of Fred Olsen's success and special interests in oil and shipping. It seems that while one hand has fed the crisis, the other hand is now benefactor from saving it. The visual impact on Paul's Hill 2 on Glenarder. The visual impact of Paul's Hill 2 development on our landscape will be significant and major. We purchased Glenarder primarily for its scenic value, so going from 0 turbines to 5 is a major change to our landscape. The applicant's assessment of Glenarder, the magnitude of change at this location is judged to be moderate, is contrary to the LVI stating there will be significant and major visual effect. Quote, "Overall, the openness of the view along the Alt-Order Valley will be retained," is a disingenuous statement because Fred Olsen Renewables has also application in process for Rothus 3, showing proven intention of developing this same view and valley. Therefore, we will not retain that view if it is approved. Response to Mr. Denny's report. Just to clarify, the barn across our land is not between us and the turbines, and it does not provide screening to the development. Quote, "With regard to the private views from residential properties, a substantial, major and significant change in the view does not mean necessarily an unacceptable change. This is opinion, not fact, and furthermore, Glenarder's property value is largely dependent on the landscape and will be negatively impacted by the development." Quote, "That any individual resident would prefer not to live near a wind farm, the visual impact would have to be excessively dominant. Add into the equation of the wind farm the industrial cutting scar, now 12 years later still a blight on Roy's Hill, then the impact will be excessively dominant." Quote, "Seeing turbines in a view from a property or its curtilage is not in itself offensive or unacceptable. Again, this is opinion. If you are in the wind farm business, then views of turbines is likely a beautiful thing. For us, it's not." Quote, "The basic question is whether a development would unacceptably affect living conditions enjoyed through the existing use of land or buildings, which ought to be protected in the public interest. Over 200 groups of bookings from Glenarder, together with Sporting Scotland's hundreds of clients, all experience this landscape. Certainly this qualifies as public interest and the views should be protected as such." Objection cumulative view assessment. Quote, "There are no habitable properties or settlements likely to experience a visual effect from the proposed development or from the cumulative position that could be considered overbearing or overwhelming. We disagree. The visual impact from Paul's Hill 2 will be immensely exacerbated by the visual effects of a proposed additional 77 turbines from Clashgower and Roths 3, approximately 300 of which will fill our skyline up to 700 feet tall. This assessment defies logic and reality. It is impossible to have major or significant effect from the view of 5 turbines, but no cumulative visual effect from an additional 33 turbines. Construction, traffic, and visual landscape effect. Glen Arder and Glen Arder Holiday Let are situated on the final 2 kilometres of the planned access route of the road leading to the entrance site. We will have full view and experience major impact related to construction traffic. Quote, the impacts considered to be significant relate to the visual and landscape effect at a local level through the construction between the trunk road network and this site. The summary outlines an estimated approximately 1,400 deliveries of construction vehicles and 59 vehicles carrying turbine components going in, and I assume the same going out. As a result, our home will be effectively hijacked during this time by the priority of the applicant. We cannot operate our holiday business through this time. Objection regarding conclusions reached with regard to the additional information assessment. The client constantly leans on the potential Clashgower and Rothers 3 in order to diminish the visual impact from Paul's 2 turbines, of which Fred Olsen is also the applicant in Rothers 3. The applicant's use of the word cumulative can be misleading. The context of cumulative means to add to increase the effect of. It does not mean to make less or diminish as cumulative assessments present. Property value related to visual assessments. All documents submitted by the applicant fail to acknowledge visual assessment ramifications on our property values and tourist business. This is outlined fully in my social business statement. The landscape asset was factored into the value and the purchase price of the property. Therefore, our landscape has an inherent value. Glen Arder Holiday Let related to visual assessment. The unique selling point to our guests is remote and tranquil location with views. On Airbnb, we have over 150 excellent reviews, most of which reference our stunning location. We support Moray tourist targets of 225 by providing quality visitor accommodation. Rather than supporting this small tourist business, it seems that the development is willing to crush them. Response to planning policy on tourism. It is supposition to argue that because tourism employment increased by 15% through the same period which wind farms doubled, that this equates to developments having no negative visual impact. It could just as easily be reasoned the impact was offset by the stellar job Moray Tourism and the whisky industry have done in marketing themselves. Quote, it is acknowledged that tourism is an important part of the economy in the Moray area, including the Spey Valley and its various distilleries, all of which very successfully coexist with existing operational wind farms. True, tourism and distilleries coexist with the existing operational wind farms. Moray has 600 plus onshore turbines in proposal. That represents a 300% increase. Will sectors coexist successfully as larger turbines encroach closer to businesses. Businesses also coexist and invest because they have no option. Macallans cannot up and move to, for example, Dundee because their product is locally identified. Quote, it can be fairly concluded that if wind farms were having a materially detrimental impact on the whisky sector and other tourism, then very significant investments, such as at McAllen, would be unlikely to be made. This is also pure conjecture. Wind farms and the wines and spirits sector bear no effect on each other. McAllen's is a product, is sold and consumed globally. Wind developments are irrelevant to their success globally. Objection based on dark sky initiatives. The new generation of turbines being proposed by Paul's Hill, Clashgar and Rothes and Berryburn will bring new levels of aviation lighting which will severely diminish our dark skies, a resource that Scotland recognises as important to preserve as well as allowing new tourism opportunities. The key planning targets. The planning system should support economically, environmentally and socially sustainable places by enabling development that balances the costs and the benefits of a proposal over the longer term. The aim is to achieve the right development in the right place. It is not to allow a development at any cost. Considerations, the scale of contribution to the renewable energy targets. The contribution for this application for 7 turbines towards energy targets is diminished by Frode Elson's larger energy global oil and drilling activities. Nor does the scale of contribution from only 7 turbines measure in a significant way towards national energy targets or local communities. Nor do the benefits from 7 turbines balance the large cost of the long-term visual impact on the Alt-Harder, the Spey Valley landscape, or the carbon footprint of global sourcing of materials, manufacturing of steel and transportation to site and construction, or the wildlife and habitat, or the visual impact and distress to the lives of the wind farm neighbours, the visual impact and economic stress to neighbours' tourist businesses, and the public interest of the views of Alt-Arda. Additionally, the same applies to the year-long impact of road traffic logistics to local residents and Moray at large. The applicant's documents rely heavily on wordage such as, it is not anticipated, it is not considered, or we hope. This does not inspire confidence and removes all obligation from the developer. The applicant presents, it is extremely important to function as a good neighbour. This sincerity is belied by blasé statements such as, effects may be deemed significant and adverse, but they do not have to be rendered harmless to be acceptable. This is a very low bar indeed for a neighbour. Conclusion. We present the inherent landscape value of our property will be forever destroyed by this development, at least in our lifetime and experience. The Paul's Hill 2 development would lead the charge of the decimation of the Alt-Arda Valley encircling our landscape. The applicant's other developments, Rothes 3, is further proof of this intention. To postulate there will be no cumulative visual impact on property related to Clashgower and Rothes 3 is frankly ridiculous and self-serving logic assessment of the applicant. The applicant ignores Scottish planning policy stipulations of supporting small businesses, specifically local tourist businesses, because it is evident they are willing to decimate ours and our neighbours' business in the process of this application. Presumption. It is considered that the proposed development can claim the presumption in favour of development that contributes to sustainable development. We object in principle because the Fred Olsen Group holding company does not, as a whole, contribute to reducing emissions or sustainable climate change policy. We conclude that in the case of this development, the factors of rebuttal do negate the presumption. Therefore, for all the reasons outlined, the application for Paul's Hill 2 does not satisfy the national planning policy of being the right development in the right place, as set out in paragraph of the SPP. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, because I think most of it will be covered in the next 2 days.
Mr. Trinning, do you have any questions? I had a couple of questions, Ms. Mandel, if I can find them. We grateful that you let us look at the view from your site, and we looked at the viewpoint RR01, Glenarder residential amenity. I'm just checking that following the relatively recent tree felling that your neighbour's done, you're content that that hasn't made the situation any worse, given that the height of these things above the ground in terms of what you would see?
Referring to their trees being felled?
Yeah.
No, that doesn't impact.
That's, yeah,
it's not in our sight line.
No, yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to check you didn't think that that had had any change to how this would affect you. Yeah, thank you. And I read somewhere, yes, I think it was in your socioeconomic paper, and I might be better off asking it then, but I'll ask it now because I've remembered. You were talking about possible future plans for development at your property. I just wondered, because I think I recall your belief that when you acquired the property, in fact, there was existing planning permission for various things. I just wondered how far into that you had looked, and you've determined that they haven't expired or something like that.
Well, when we purchased the property, it had planning permission, and it's kind of we're not really sure if it's because he started the work, so code is like if it started, it's in process. But we did talk to Murray Council, and even if it has elapsed, it would be easy for us to basically reapply using the same. So it's something we've been looking into since we bought the property, is to either extend our property or build a secondary holiday let. It's something we just haven't time-wise got round to, but it's definitely an option that we have had. We've honestly put it on hold in the last 2 years because we'd have to weigh if that investment was worth it or not, depending on what happens with this, because we obviously don't want to risk that investment. But that planning permission was very much part of the price we paid for the property as well.
Great, thank you. That was it from me. Thank you very much. Looking at Mr. Campbell, did you do your word search? Have you done that yet? And she's not here. I couldn't see behind you. I thought she was hiding behind you there. It's not a problem. As I said, I can always do the same myself, but. Excellent. Okay, unless anyone else has anything to add, I think we're done on this session. In terms of tomorrow, does anyone fancy starting slightly earlier just to make sure we get it all done? I don't know. Yeah, 9:30? Yeah, 9:30 tomorrow. Yeah, there's nobody here who will be nobody who's not here would be surprised by that, so I think we're okay. So yeah, 9:30 start. We will start with the session on policy, then move on to socio-economic effects, and finally we'll discuss the issue of conditions. Okay, thank you very much. See you at 9:30.